Okay.
Okay.
What should we talk about? I must admit the beginning was quite reasonable. I mean, considering it was miniature in space, and it's pretty good. The actual credits, which I'm responsible for, are pretty awful, but then they're done on the cheap. So
I think they're pretty serviceable, but obviously, as you say, a bit more money, and you could have got it looking.
yes, I mean the whole film was done on the cheap, really. So
Yeah.
as I told you, it's done with a budget of 5 years ago, or whatever it was, for Superman 1. Don't know how long was it since Superman 1 was made.
Well, that was 78, so that's, oh God, that's 42.
Oh God, it was much longer than, wasn't it? It was done for virtually the same budget, apparently.
Yeah, because the original budget for Superman 4 was $35 million, which is basically kind of what Superman 1 cost. So
Right.
obviously in the 8 years in between, obviously costs have gone up quite a bit in that time.
And what were the box office? Do you know?
I'll just go to elaborate slightly further. The budget was 35 million, so that was it went into pre-production at 35 million, and then Canon were having lots of financial difficulties at that time, and they wanted to make a film called Masters of the Universe. They didn't have money for it, and they very much like to make 100 films a year. They were very, very strange business sense. So they took half of that 35 million and gave it to Master of the Universe. So the actual budget of the film was 17 million.
It's true.
So to do all of what you guys did on that money is, I think, very, once you see the film in that in mind, I think it's very...
That's not bad, is it?
No.
Some of the matte paintings I'm responsible for are just so dreadful. It's worth having a look at them. Because in my defense, Sid Fury would say, even when he saw a test, he'd say, cut it into final print, because we didn't have the money. I realize that now. I just thought he was lazy, but he's not. He didn't have any reason not to. He had to do it, really. So
they would have gone in a lot earlier than you would have liked. You would have done another...
Yes. Oh gosh, yes. I mean, I was terribly inexperienced at matte painting, and remain so, I'm glad to say. I was never given the chance to make them better, the matte paintings. But
did you ever fancy having another go at matte paintings and other films?
No, I didn't enjoy it, really. I like drawing, and I like drawing too much to do still life paintings, basically. Which, as far as I like drawing action and boys comics.
Oh yeah. So to go back to your previous question of how much money the film made, I think it made about 16 million in its US run, which was just under its budget. So technically, if you think of all the markets, it would have made its money back. And obviously since then with the DVDs and things, so it
yes, because since then, of course, Canon film has gone down, haven't they, completely? So
they were kind of in sort of free fall since.
I think the last film they made was the one I worked on, which was Chaplin. I think that was the last, possibly. There.
Yeah, and ironically, a good film. So it was. They went. They've made for so many years films of questionable quality, and then they get something good.
It wasn't a bad film, Chaplin. It wasn't. Yeah. It wasn't record breaking or anything, but it was okay. Very competent, I suppose. But,
there is a documentary about Canon films, and if you've seen it, it's called Electric Boogaloo, and it's about the insane history of Canon films, the producers, everything that went to.
I can't remember whether there were two brothers or two cousins that ran it. I think they were cousins.
I want to say cousins, yeah.
Yes, I did meet them both, but I can't remember them at all. So,
which I maybe speaks volumes, doesn't it, a little bit?
Yes, I think I told you I was sort of going through a trauma at that time anyway, finding work on films and doing Garth every day for the Daily Mirror. I was beginning to find it very difficult. And so I was greatly on the verge of giving up Garth, but I was persuaded not to by the strips editor of the Mirror, and I'm grateful that he did persuade me not to, because in fact I loved doing Garth. So
Oh yeah. You want to keep doing that, especially given how Superman 4 turned out. You know, you kept the better project, definitely.
Well, quite, yes.
Yeah.
But, and one of the things that tipped me to continue doing Garth, funnily enough, was when I met the guy playing Nuclear Man, because I thought he'd make a perfect Garth. I thought he was the perfect size and sort of the right look. But of course he couldn't act for Toffee, but never mind. But
Forward Mark Pillow was his name. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. But he's never been in anything since, has he? I wouldn't have thought.
I think he's got 2 credits to his name. I think one is Superman, and one's like a TV episode or something he popped in as a.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I think after that he wanted to raise his family, and I think he probably thought, well, film business isn't that good environment. So I think he ended up running a vineyard and things like that.
I don't know where Sid found him or who found it for Sid, but still. But he was quite well suited for the part, I guess, because he didn't have to say anything, did he, particularly? He just had to roar now and then.
Yeah, he fit the bill quite well. And I thought it was quite good to have Gene Hackman do his voice. That was quite... So he didn't even have a speaking part, poor chap, really, but...
Yes. Thank you very much. Thanks for all your help.
Oh, no, thanks for your support.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
There we go.
Hi, Mark. You okay?
Hello. Yeah, I'm all right. Sorry about that. I had to... it just wouldn't let me join the meeting, so I just went into Safari and copied the link. So that's good. How are you?
I'm very good. Yeah. How are you doing?
Very good indeed. Yeah, things are busy. I'm heading back to the UK next week, or on the 13th. So things are great. I'm going to do some motion capture animation, which will be a lot of fun.
Oh,
and things are good.
Fantastic. I've got you on your side currently, Mark. I don't know if you can flip your device or that's perfect. Lovely.
Okay, there we go.
That's great.
There we go.
Right. Okay. So is it a visual effects film you've got your motion capture for video game?
Yes, it's a game. It's a huge game called Squadron 42, which they've been filming for years. And it's Gary Oldman and Gillian Anderson and Mark Hamill. And I mean, I had to sign all these non-disclosure things, but it's all over the internet now, and they've got trailers everywhere. So I can say that much. I can't really say more than that. But I did 2 blocks of filming before, and the last block of filming, they gave my character a nickname. So that's always a really good sign when suddenly you've got a nickname in the script. And they didn't kill me off, and I didn't film. Unlike other things I've done where you film dying 30 different ways, I didn't die. So I thought, well, maybe they'll bring me back, and they are, because there's going to be 3 games, I think, in the series. So I'm very excited about that. It's a lot of fun. It's a strange way of working, but because you forget that you've got this headgear on your, they want you to do movie acting. They want it very intimate, but then you get too close to the other actor, and your headgear hits their headgear, so it's it's very different.
Well, that sounds really, really fun thing to do. So I think the first thing my audience will want to know is just a bit more about yourself. So I just wanted to ask you what made you want to get into acting in the first place, and how did you go about that endeavor?
I think I always wanted to act. I started working when I was about 7. I always wanted to act, and I had to stay at school. Obviously, I wasn't allowed to miss any school, so it was very restricted to summer and things like that. So I always wanted to do that, but then I kind of developed a lot of terrible habits, as child actors can do, and I sort of got to the age where I wanted to train. I wanted to do a classical training. So I wanted to go to England, and my father being British, I was able to do that. And so I auditioned for about 5 of the drama schools in London, and I went to LAMDA, and it was the best thing for me, because one thing about, I wanted to go as far away as possible from where I lived in Canada, not because I didn't like it, but because I just knew the first time things got difficult, I'd be back on a bus. So going to New York didn't seem it would work for me. So, and then I was really lucky. I got an agent and a job before I finished drama school in my final year. And it was great. I was really fortunate right from the get-go. I landed on my feet very quickly. So, and I stayed. I was never intended to stay in the UK, but I did. And then 30 something years later, I still have a home there, and I still go back and forth and work. And I've been so fortunate. Unlike when you work in other parts of the world, you get very slotted into, you either do TV or you do film. You either do theater or you do film. And it doesn't always work that it crosses over. But in the UK, I did radio, I did TV, I did film, so much theater. I mean, and it was just great. So it was able to, work in all the different disciplines. So it's been really good. I'm really lucky, touch wood.
Oh, wonderful. What were some highlights of your stage work?
I suppose, well, gosh, it's an interesting question that people ask you that, but it's really, and what would be a highlight to other people is not necessarily a highlight to you. It's because you're really, really great acting when you get a part that you just understand. It's like flying. Like there's just no limitations to what you can do with that character because it just fits you 100%. And that's happened a few times, but in places like Salisbury Rep and nothing that anyone would particularly know. It's personal to me. I suppose in terms of big things, it's, playing Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast in the West End was fantastic. I mean, it was, if I never do another £10 million musical in my life, I'm just really glad that was the one I did because, I had the best number and 26-piece orchestra and 35 people in the cast. It was just tremendous. And Disney don't cheap out. Everything was the best. And it was a fantastic experience to do that. And then I did another play, which I absolutely loved, which bombed terribly, called Jackie, An American Life, about Jacqueline Kennedy. And it was a famous disaster. But I loved it. I played like 31 different characters in it, from Nixon to Frank Sinatra and I was fortunate. I didn't get burnt in the reviews and got a job very quickly. Sir Ralph Richardson was famous for saying, always be good in a flop because you're going to be available the next week. And he was absolutely right. So but it was a tremendous experience, and the play just got targeted, and it was such a shame because it was very clever, very Monty Python style zaniness, and the whole thing was with puppets and all kinds, which just make me, when you think of Book of Mormon now, I mean, that's kind of a shame, really, because and I love that, and the complete works of Shakespeare reduced, where we did all of Shakespeare's plays in an hour and a half. That was at the Criterion Theatre. I did about a year in that. And that was great. There was just three of us, and it was a really physical piece of theatre. I really enjoyed it. So those would be my theatrical highlights for sure.
Oh, that's wonderful. How long were you in Beauty and the Beast for? How long was the run?
A year. Yeah, a year. A year. And it was great. As I say, it was a wonderful cast. It was John Barrowman, Michelle Gale was playing Belle, Gemma Craven from The Slipper and the Rose and multiple other things. She was playing Mrs. Potts. It was a tremendous group of people, and nothing beats. You can be tired, dead tired, and you just hear the orchestra, and your energy just starts to go up. And it's a 2,500 seater, and it's fantastic. People love those shows, and I think we would have stayed on except The Lion King, and Disney was very worried that they couldn't have two Disney shows in the West End at that time. So you're talking 1999, and that Beauty and the Beast would cannibalize The Lion King or vice versa. Yeah. Those shows are astronomically expensive. The Beauty and the Beast was $250,000 a week. They had to take. And the break, if you fall below the break in the West End 2 weeks running, they kick you out. You have to go. So, and The Lion King cost $500,000 a week. That was in 2000. So God knows what it costs now. Yeah. So those shows are astronomical, the amount of money it takes to do them. So they can't mess around. So they were just very nervous. So Disney decided, well, we'll close it. We'll take Beauty and the Beast off because we can't afford to have competition with ourselves.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. That's fair enough from their point of view. I think a lot of people don't realize how expensive West End productions are and how many tickets you have to sell.
Oh yeah.
It's yeah.
It's tremendous, and you get very worried when you're on stage and you come out, and if it's a bad day, you think, "Oh, this isn't good. There's not many people out there, so this is not going to last too long." And I've been in a few of those when you're playing to a dragon's mouth and there's nobody out there, but you still have to do the show. Yeah, no, it can happen very, very fast. I was in a play years ago at the Savoy, which was a wonderful experience, full of all these very famous television stars from the 60s and 70s, like Patrick McNee and from the Avengers, and David Langton from Upstairs Downstairs. It was wonderful. A couple of Carry On people were in it, and it was tremendous, and we weren't doing that well. But the director was Brian Forbes, and he was a very good friend of the Queen Mother's and Princess Margaret. And the Queen Mother called up and said, "How's the play doing?" He said, "Well, not very good, Mom." And she said, "Well, I'll come and I'll bring Margaret." So she came and she wore all her Queen Mother clothes and all this stuff. And the best thing about it was the notice had gone up. We were supposed to come off. She stood in all the papers and she held the, I was showing you here. She held the program like that so that they couldn't photograph her without the title of the play. It was right across like that, right across the face. And our houses boomed, just boomed overnight. They took the notice down and we kept on going. So it was very, very funny.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, it was very sweet of her. Very sweet of her.
I do a lot of Avengers events. So I've got to ask what it was like working with Patrick McNee.
Oh, he was great. He was such a kind man. Very, very eccentric. I mean, quite, very eccentric, odd. Like one day he turned up in rehearsal in safari gear because he decided his character, who was supposed to be a great playwright, was actually a great hunter as well. It was never explained why he turned up in the safari suit and then he abandoned it. He was totally, and he would tell you everything, which I'm not going to repeat, but he had no filters, no shame, and he would say to me, "Oh, they say I'm this and I do drugs and say I do all this and this stuff." He says, "Absolute rot." He would tell you all this gossip about him and what was true and what wasn't true, but very kind. He gave me an absolutely beautiful book. He was very generous to everyone in the cast. And if you had a moment in the play, he never tried to take that moment away from you. If the focus was on you, he let you have the focus. And I know that sounds an odd thing to say, but that doesn't always happen. I'm sorry. Especially not when people are coming to see, specifically to see him or whoever else is in the play. They're not coming to see me. So he could easily be within his rights to kind of just dominate the stage all the time. But he didn't. He was very, very generous and very funny, and I was very fond of him. Very fond of him. That's wonderful.
And then, of course, you did quite a lot of TV work. Series, Hale and Pace, Elliot Smith and Jones. Did you enjoy doing television comedy?
I did. I loved it. I mean, I was really, really lucky because being North American, it can be really hard here. You get slotted into, like, if you look at this cast for Superman 4, I was at that time part of the North American mafia. We all moved from one film to another because there were only so many of us. So, and those guys all did all of that. And I was determined when I left drama school that I was not going to get pigeonholed into just playing an American tourist saying something loud in the background. And so I was really anxious to get into, and I was just really lucky. I got into a sitcom called Executive Stress with Penelope Keith and Peter Bowles, and I was a regular on that for 3 seasons. And the people that I met through that, it was tremendous, and the way my career kind of went from there. And I did a lot of comedy on the Fringe Theatre. So I was never a stand-up comic, not clever enough for that, but a lot of comedy. And that's how I got into Last Smith and Jones. That's how I got Hale and Pace. And then I really landed on my feet because I got into the comic strip. And Peter Richardson was the first one who would let me play British characters. The second film I did for him, the script arrived and it said, "Fat 50-year-old Tory MP." And I was about 32 and North American as far as they were concerned. And if he believed you could do it, you did it. And if you failed, you never got to do it again. But if you could do it, that was it. So, and I worked for him. I did, I think, 8 films for him, and then a television series called The Glam Metal Detectives, and he was extraordinary. He said to me one day, we were doing The Pope Must Die with Robert Coltrane, and he said to me, "Oh, I'm doing this series about a rock group who saved the world, and I really think you'd be, I see the guy who runs the group as kind of a man from U.N.C.L.E. character. I think you'd be great. You should do this." And I went, sure. And then a year went by, and he called me up and said, so we're going to do this thing. And he said, how do you want to be involved? I mean, do you want to just show up on the day and say the lines, or would you like to be one of the writers on the show? Who asks you that? Who gives you that offer? I was like, I'm in, I'll be a writer. I didn't know if I could write or not. I said, I'm in, I'll do it. Absolutely. I'm in 100%. It was fantastic. So as I say, I've been very very, very fortunate along the way. So,
oh yeah,
it's harder now you get older, but it's yeah. So,
well, that's a good point you mentioned. Do you find as you get older, there's less roles, or
oh, there's definitely less roles. There's definitely less. You for women, it's early. For men, there's a really weird gap where you're no longer the father necessarily, and it's just a second family, and you're not the grandfather, right? So there's a weird gap, and now with all the with the way casting is done and all the demographics that have to be covered and the openness of casting. So if you're in a regular series and all the lead characters are white, or 1 or 2 people, then all the guest characters are going to fit the other demographics. They're going to be looking for cross casting, and I'm not criticizing that. I think it's great, but they're going to be looking straight across the boards. So, and well past middle-aged, a white guy is not necessarily the first person they're looking for, so it's changed a lot. It's shifted for sure. It has shifted. And and in North America, it's brutal because they have, there are some shows where they actually have no one over 40. It's written in the, I auditioned for an episode of a series which I won't name up because it was quite popular, and the guy looked at me and he said, "Wow, you'd have been great 10 years ago." And I'm like, I can't do anything about that. And there's a room full of people, and he said it right to my face, and there's a room full of people, and I thought, well, I can't do anything about that. Sorry. Yeah, it does get, the parts change. Let's just put it that way. They change the characters you get offered. So
I'm guessing you have to have a pretty thick skin to be an actor.
You have to have a really thick skin, because it's still the only profession where you can go in and they will not criticize you to your face so much these days, but they used to. You're, putting on a bit of weight there, Mark. Looking a bit tired, Mark. And particularly if you know the casting people well, because they think you're letting them down. One that riveted to my receding hairline, and the director was going, finally went, "Can you do it again? Does anyone have a hat?" It's because he wanted to see less of my forehead on the monitor. But I mean, you know what that's about. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do about that. And it's still the one profession where they feel they have a right to say so. You hear about it all the time about actors who've got clauses in their contracts about weight and that's just the way it is, whether their hair needs to be dyed, or especially American stuff, they will have it actually written down what they can do. Disney was quite strict. I was not to say, I could never call it Beauty and the Beast. I could only refer it to as Disney's Beauty and the Beast. They had a clause where I was not allowed to swear in public. I wouldn't sign that one. I put not applicable. They never read it. I put not applicable beside it. I gotta be held responsible for that. So, they had really strict rules, and sometimes the contracts are a little odd, for sure. Yeah, and it's often about appearance.
So do you find there's sometimes pressure to put a wig on for different hairlines, or I know Jude Law.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh, they're always looking around, and that's another thing. That sort of thing. They don't have the budget anymore. They used to have huge budgets for these things, and so everyone would be wearing a wig. Now they're trying to, they don't. And oh yeah, there is a lot of that. And yeah, there's a lot of that. I find that most characters I'm playing now, at some point they wear a hat. but not always all the way through, but at some point they've got a hat on. So yeah, and American stuff more so than British don't really, aren't that bothered. British just want you to be, just to be yourself more, I would say. But American stuff, they're very concerned about appearance and how you come across. Sometimes in British stuff, they want you to wear your own clothes. There's just no budget. So, so it's a little different for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like maybe in the American market, it's perhaps a bit unhealthy, because you're trying to create this perfect image of people, and people watching are thinking, well, my hair's going back, this person's isn't, and everyone's like supermodels, so maybe it's not quite healthy.
Oh yeah, and the thing is, whenever you have that kind of, whenever that attention is drawn to you in a work environment, if it's your weight or whatever, it becomes your obsession. It becomes your obsession, because all you see is that everyone else is thin, or everyone else has a full head of hair. You don't notice the bald guy. You don't notice the guy that's overweight, or the woman that's you just fixate. And I've worked with plenty of actors, particularly female actors, because now we're not supposed to say actress anymore. They who it's a huge pressure, huge pressure for them. Absolutely enormous, their appearance. Absolutely is the number one thing. And in Superman 4, that was the case for Margot Kidder. She was sidelined, basically.
Yeah.
And she would shout on the set, not in anger, as a joke, that I'm too old, that's why I'm hardly in this thing. And they brought in Mariel Hemingway. So who was sweet, and incredibly nervous, because she hadn't worked in 2 years. So she was very, very nervous. She was very nervous. But oh yeah, pressure is tremendous for women. This is really unfair.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned bringing in the Superman 4 producers definitely wanted to because people like Jackie Cooper, Mark Kidder, Mark McClure, they were sort of just getting older, and they definitely was a sense to bring in new blood. One of which, of course, was John Cryer. Do you remember John Cryer?
Yes, John and I shared a limousine. We had to share a limousine. That was because they were cutting on the budget. I'm not sure John was too thrilled about that, but no, he was fine. I'm joking. I have no idea whether he was. He just looked a little shocked the first time I jumped in the car. But I was on a very short period of time. But in those days, they didn't shoot things. The pressure was different. You could be a week doing one scene. You could be ages, because there were setbacks and second unit and weather and all those things. So, John Cryer was very LA, because he was on his phone, the car phone, and he was on the phone all the time. He was dealing the next movie, the next project, it must have been after Pretty in Pink. It must have been after that, wasn't it? Yeah, it must have been.
Well, I think it was.
Yeah. So he was quite. It's a very different approach. Americans are American actors, especially then. They're very different from British actors. British actors are much more, what have you been up to? How are you doing? Did you see this? Wasn't it great weather? American actors is film. They're talking about film deals. So-and-so's doing this. And he was a bit, he was very determined. Let's just put it that way. But nice, nice. Yeah. They were all nice. The only, the nicest, it was Gene Hackman. Just super relaxed, super cool. If he spotted somebody new on the set, he went straight over and introduced himself, which he didn't have to do at all. It's not like he was going to be doing a scene with them. So, but if he spotted a new face, straight over, because the tension on the set's quite big, quite high. So to have him being this just kind of, I'm not saying he didn't care, and that maybe he didn't. I don't know, but I doubt that somehow. I'm not, because he loved playing Lex Luthor. So I'm not saying he didn't. He was just a very chill man. He'd seen it all before. I'm sure he'd seen. He'd been. He just went with the flow. He was really nice, really friendly.
Oh, good. So you were probably on the film for a week?
I was only on the film 4 days. I was only on the film 4 days.
Yeah.
There was a bit of sequence that disappeared. So it was a longer sequence of stuff, but yeah. And yeah, that was it. I was actually doing the play with Patrick McNee at the same time, because they pasted a big star on my dressing room door when I came into the theater because I'd got this job. So it was very sweet. It was very sweet. So yeah, and yeah, it was fun. It was very funny to work on because you saw all the kind of wires and the way Christopher Reeve flew out of shot and stuff, and it was also he stepped on a seesaw. And it was a bunch of prop guys that pulled him out of shot, which was hilariously funny. Yeah. And I don't know whether it was the same team of guys, but they seemed to know they were in sync. Christopher Reeve was totally in sync with them, and they were totally in sync with him. And he just put one hand on this bar, stepped on the seesaw, and he shot out of frame with these guys. It's very funny. But yeah, so and Christopher Reeve was very serious about it. I mean, but I think if you're going to play Superman, you need to be, because if you don't take it seriously, who's going to? He was very, very no joking around, nothing. He was very, very focused, and so you went with his tone. There was no messing around when you were actually working. There's not a lot of chat between takes or anything like that. He was very, very focused. So I think he had a producer's credit on it, so maybe that would have probably helped. It's often why they like actors to have a producer's credit on a film, because then they're a little bit more aware of the budget. So, but yeah. So, is there anything else?
Oh yeah. I mean, as you say, Christopher Reeve had a vested interest in the film. He doesn't have a producer's credit, but he has a story credit.
Yeah, they all kind of blamed each other afterwards, which was a bit unfortunate. But a lot of these films, promises are made, and I'm not saying that promises are made that are having no intention of being kept, but sometimes it appears that way. Yeah. And I do think that they were so desperate to get him back in the suit that, and he had a very different vision of what he wanted to do to make it different from the other three. And I don't think the two are combined very well in the end. I think they collided more than anything else, and the budget didn't allow for. I'm not saying he was duped, but I think he was misled a bit. I think he was misled.
Yeah. I think the Cannon group did have a reputation that was well established by the time Chris got involved with them. But of course, again, they make certain promises, and
they did, and they did the same. I remember reading that he afterwards that they promised him 2 other films which were never made to get him back in the suit. They did the same to Faye Dunaway with Ordeal by Innocence. They promised her 2 other projects if she would do that, the Agatha Christie thing. I think it was Ordeal by Innocence, but they had a reputation for doing that. So, and it's always a gamble. I don't think that Christopher Reeve necessarily believed it, but you hope that, okay, if we're going to work like that together and this is a big success, then of course you will do it. And of course it wasn't a big success. And his if you look at his resume, his actual film career kind of stalled after that for a bit. There were quite a few years before he kind of moved to TV, and he did come back in films, but it did stall his film career for a bit. So, it's a funny thing, industry. It's it's totally about the money, and what you take, how much you can take in a film. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think, as you say, his career really suffered from it, and I don't think he ever recovered, really, unfortunately. And,
not on film.
No, and I think it was his autobiography I was reading a while ago, and after Superman, he had to start auditioning for roles again, and and after the first Superman film, he was just offered, of course, to what it was before. But were you? So it sounds like you were aware that there was some issues.
The tension on the set was quite. Sorry, my light keeps flickering. The tension on the set was quite pronounced, right? just when I went in, because I had been doing this play and this sitcom at the same time and playing American. So the casting people were just looking for Americans anywhere they could find. And I'm not American, but I was playing American. So they called me in just as I was going in to meet Sidney Furie onto the soundstage, because they were already shooting.
Yeah.
The casting director turned to me and went, "You're not Canadian, are you?" And I went, I didn't know what to say. And she said, "Because he doesn't want any Canadians on the set." And I, why? And he said, because their accents because he's Canadian and he can hear the Canadian accent and he doesn't want Canadians on the set. She never gave me a chance to answer, so I didn't say anything. And so I went up to Sidney Furie and he gave me the script to read, and I read the script, although the bit that was cut and the bit that I actually did, and he went, "No, that's a fucking American. I don't want any more Canadians on this set." I mean, really shouted. So that was kind of strange. So there was something about the voice thing. I don't know what that was about, because they dubbed Jane Brooke, who I've been working in the theater with, and she's American, and they gave her this, I think, strange voice. She's got a beautiful voice. She's very Grace Kelly. She was very, and I remember she was stunned that they dubbed her. But that was another thing that used to happen much more than it does now. A very dear old friend of mine, good friend of mine, I shouldn't say old friend of mine, is Anthony, who famously got dubbed in Krull, who famously was dubbed in Krull. And I learned from that, and I would always ask for a dubbing clause in my contract. That if they felt my accent or whatever was wrong, that I got the chance to correct it, not just go and find another voice, because they used to do it a lot. You'd turn around and suddenly they'd stuck somebody else's voice on it. For what reason, I don't know. And in Jane's case, I have no idea. She has a beautiful speaking voice, so I don't know why they would have done that. And she's American, so there were a lot of odd things happening like that.
Yeah. So I take it you. So what was your impression when you saw the? Did you probably didn't go to the premiere, but did you?
I did. I did go to the premiere. I did. It was hilarious, and I went, and a whole bunch of friends of mine came. And I remember being really, really nervous the whole way through the film, because so many people got cut. So many characters and storylines were cut. So I'm sitting in a row of people whose parts have gone. So they're getting tense in their seats, right? So then they got to mine, and my very kind group of friends that came to support me, when I appeared on the screen, they started cheering. And when I spoke, they started howling and stamping their feet, and all the Academy executives were turning around and looking like, who's that? Like this. So I sunk so low in my seat. I was like, thanks, guys. The thing is, a lot of the bad special effects, funnily enough, sometimes they're special effects. It's worse on TV or worse on your computer. They actually look fine on the big screen because your eye can't read it. It's too big. So you don't, and this was at the Dominion. So you don't read the joins in the same way that you do when it's on TV and you think, God, that's terrible. But in the cinema, it didn't look. The print was beautiful. I thought the story was really went off a bit, and there was so much to cut that it didn't flow right. That was my opinion. It just too much had been cut, and that can happen. Sometimes they cut too much, and the film is actually better at 2.5 hours than it is at 90 minutes. It's a weird thing. I mean, I'm not saying it's 2.5 hours, but there were big holes in the plot. I thought, I was just relieved. You actors, you're just always relieved you haven't been cut.
Oh yeah,
because
it was one of those strange films that was cut by Warner Bros., not the director. He wasn't.
That's right.
They just took it away from and it seems that whenever the studio does that, they seem to make it worse, not better in most cases.
I did read somewhere, or actually maybe I saw it on YouTube, that there was talk of reassembling it, but I'm not sure, still not sure that would have saved it. I don't think that Christopher Reeves, the more serious story that he wanted to sell, I'm not sure it would have fit with that you know, I mean, as they reimagined Batman and they reimagined Superman and made it darker and darker, I don't think people were ready for that then. From those comic book characters. What I thought was really sad was that the comedy wasn't there, because he was such a good comic actor, Christopher Reeve. He was so good at comedy. That was the bit that I thought was really missing. Yeah.
So did you find that once Sidney Furie was happy with your accent, that he was quite a good director to work with?
Oh, he was great. He was great. But, you know, and that's the other thing I will find, would say, especially on those big films like Maleficent, and I've done a couple of big films like that, big American films. Once they've hired you, they're not after you. They trust you can do the job. Once they've hired you, they just expect you can do the job. And so they don't really interfere too much, unless they'll say something like, you're in his light, or you need to move quicker, or can you do it a little faster, or can you slow down, things like that. And so sometimes the other actor will say, I need a beat longer before you say that line, because I can't finish what I'm doing. So but no, he was great, and very, very, very calm. Like, you know, and I think the shouting, when he shouted, now that's American, it wasn't in anger. It was just, he wanted to prove now that, you know, look here, this is what we want. So it wasn't like he was having a tantrum or something. No, he was fine. And, you know, it's, and very friendly, which again, does not always happen. The crew were very friendly. Again, does not always happen. I mean, on Maleficent, I had a feeling that they'd been told not to talk to anybody. It was so quiet, and nobody said hello in the morning. Nobody was very odd. But on Superman, it was a very friendly set. There was one bit where he flew over where the I don't know what the road is called outside the studios. It's not the North Circular, but it's that type of B road, and the bus was going along, and he flew over, and all these people on the bus, and he flew over on this cable like this, and they're all on the bus looking up like this, because it was so right on the edge of the studio. It was very, very funny. And of course you don't see it in the movie because they take it all away, but he was actually flying over this motorway. So and they had all the big cycloramas with the sky and stuff like that, which, you know, all the studios still have now. You know, so it was great. And those sort of films are fun to be on, because it really is the ultimate let's pretend. You know, it really is. That's why, as I say, he took it very seriously, because otherwise that can just get a little carried. You know, you can lose your focus.
Well, yeah, I think one of the best things about the film is the strength of the performances. I mean, they all everyone, no one's setting it up. It's all, despite the film's problems. You said a bit of your scene was cut. Do you think it was just a few lines, or was it quite a substantial section?
Yeah, it was just a lead in. It wasn't really needed, to be honest. I mean, of course, you're always disappointed, but it wasn't really needed. It was just a little bit at the beginning where I was talking to the boys. But you know, the trick in screenwriting is always get into the scene as late as possible and get out as fast. That's you don't need to ease your way into things. And get in when it's essential, and get out before you have to. You know, you don't need to see people go through the door and shut the door and turn the lights out. You don't need all of that. So, and that's what I think they did. That's what I think they did in the editing, because I don't think it would have served any purpose, really. It was great for me to shoot it, but you know, that's just the way it goes. And you know, and they can change everything in the editing. I did a film called The American Way with Dennis Hopper, which was renamed Riders of the Storm, which is actually was a really wild black comedy. In the character, I played this campaign manager, and for this woman running for president, and I was quite ruthless. And every scene had two little lines at the end, which were a joke that told the audience that I knew what I was doing was funny. I knew it was funny that I could manipulate all these people by pretending she was for God and religion, or that I could get that vote, get this vote, get that vote. They cut all the gag lines. all of them. So all you've got is this character that is serious all the way through. And I never would have played it like that. Had I known that it was my first film, I would never have played it like that had I known that was even possible, that they would do that. But they did. They did. They cut all the taglines because taglines slow things down. They're not needed. But I would never have played him so serious and so dour if I had known there was a chance they were going to take away those little moments. But they didn't. So, you know.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
Did you encounter Jackie Cooper on Superman 4?
No, I wish that no. I Christopher Reeve, definitely Mark Pillow, Gene Hackman, John Cryer, Marilyn Hemingway, Marco Kidder did all those, and all the American gang where Brad Lavelle is no longer with us, unfortunately, and Mac MacDonald I've worked with so many times. Don Fellows, Bill Hookins, they were all people that were very familiar because all the Raiders films were being made in England, the Superman films, the Star Wars films, all those miniseries, To Be the Best, To Do the Worst, all those Jackie Collins, those things were all being shot in the UK because of the tax breaks. Then the government shifted everything and they taxed production when it came in and when it went out. So they stopped coming in because they're not going to pay, they're not going to pay twice. So that really put the kibosh on that. Those days, that was the end of it, really. So I mean, there's still production, obviously. Pinewood's a great studio, but it's not like what it was. Now a lot of that goes to Canada. Now a lot of that's here in Canada. I'm in Canada at the moment, as I said. So a lot of that comes here. So
because Superman was shot at Elstree Studios, but
that's right.
Worked at Pinewood.
Yeah.
Wow. Did you have which one do you prefer? Is there any
Pinewood. Pinewood's a great studio. But I mean, Elstree was good, but Elstree went through a really funny time because it became EMI and then it became Canon. And I remember that I shot something just when they stopped functioning. I was shooting at Elstree, and there was all this stuff just lying on the floor. Photographs, letters, piled up, posters, negatives, just all lying on the floor. And I picked this contact sheet up, and it was a contact sheet from The Bitch of Joan Collins and Oliver Tobias, like an old-fashioned contact sheet with all these photographs. And the guy was caretaking the room. Everything was just lying on the floor. I said, "Can I have this?" And he said, "Yeah, take what you want. It's all going to a dumpster tomorrow." And I was like, I left with so much stuff. I'm telling you. I got a letter from Julie Andrews that she wrote to the studio when she was doing Duet for One, thanking them for the tea. There was one from Ava Gardner complaining about how cold it was. That they wouldn't let me have because it was property of MGM. But it was when she was doing Pandora and the Flying Dutchman. And I got loads of stuff. Loads of negatives of Farrah Fawcett from some film she did there. And I couldn't believe that it was all going to go into a dumpster. So the studios had quite a checkered feel. So it doesn't have the cohesiveness that Pinewood does. Pinewood's like a big, beautiful old, studio that's still a proper, the commissary, the restaurant, everything feels, the grounds are looked after. You're not supposed to photograph the 007 studio, but I did. No, it's great. I really like Pinewood. Shepperton was nice too, but EMI Elstree always felt like somebody had abandoned it and it was never got its stuff back together again. Yeah.
Did you get to go in the 007 stage, or was it just around the outside?
No, I didn't go on the stage, but you're not even supposed to photograph the outside that says 007. No, no. And I was working in a studio next to where they were filming 110 Dalmatians. And there was a day when all the puppies got the trots. They'd eaten something and they all got the trots. And they were all falling out of the studio because the smell was so bad. Even getting close, they were all like, open the doors. It was very funny. But there was much more of a family feel, that at Pinewood. You'd see, they were filming Exodus or Ben-Hur or I don't know I can't remember what it was, and something Egyptian anyway. And they were all these people, like you see in the movies, all these people walking around in Egyptian costume at lunchtime. It's what are you on? What are you doing? What are you doing? It's very nice, very nice. But yeah, we all like that feel that everything's a bit Hollywood, we all like that feeling because it makes you feel, it's like the old BBC television centre. I mean, that was the greatest tragedy that went. That was the most exciting thing I've ever worked on. My first play on TV, shot at Television Centre, and next door they're shooting Parkinson, and the studio next to us they're shooting Top of the Pops, and I met all these groups, and I met Bette Midler and hung out in her dressing room, and it was just great. And they had wardrobe department, makeup department, wigs, all that got scrapped, all that got sold out. It's all outsourced now, and it's such a shame. It was a fantastic place to work. I think that was a big shame. But anyway, that's just my opinion.
So do you find that your craft has evolved quite a bit since you started in terms of how you'd rehearse, how you would shoot things?
Hugely involved, hugely changed, like a night and day, completely changed. There isn't the hierarchy in quite the same way. Now it's good and bad, but there isn't, there aren't the perks, the comforts for sure. It's changed in the way you get paid. It's changed in the way you're looked after. I mean, some jobs now in the UK, you have to get yourself there. You can be filming in Birmingham, you live in London, you have to get yourself there and you have to pay for your own food. So, I mean, things have changed hugely. No car. They don't send cars anymore. I mean, some productions do because they're worried you won't get there on time. But they used to, without doubt, even the BBC used to send cars. They were the first to stop it. But no, things have changed. But I remember reading years ago about an actor who stopped working, and I always wondered why they'd stopped working. And basically they couldn't let go. They were insulted by the fact that all the old perks had gone, that they weren't being given a car and so they wouldn't work. And I thought, well, that's it. It's like the dinosaur, you adapt or perish. You say yes or you don't. Now there's no union, there is a union, but they don't have to use union contracts. They can pay you what they want. You'll see stuff like 150 quid a day, which sounds a lot, but not if you only work 6 days a month. It's not a lot. So, the rates have just gone through the floor. The rates of what I got paid then in 1986, my daily rate was £450 a day, which for a young actor starting out, that was fantastic. Now you wouldn't get £450 a day, not a chance. So it's like they offer you 150, 190, 250, whatever they can get away with. They don't have to abide by equity. And so you always look for the productions that do honor the union. But Thatcher got rid of the closed shop. There's nothing the union can do. There's no closed shop. So here in Canada, there is. So you can't do that here. But they got rid of residuals. Now they're trying to get rid of the buyouts. There's so much stuff that's it's completely different.
So are you still, like most actors, go the work takes you, or do you prefer to work in Canada because, say, there's more protection?
No, I know. Usually, pre-COVID, I was going back and forth all the time, and but then COVID hit, and I had to make a choice. Where was I going to be? So, but normally I would come over here in the summer because the summer is so busy, the filming, and but of course that disappeared with COVID too. So now, yes, now I just, because everything, you don't have to be in the room anymore. Everything is self-tapes, when you audition. So my UK agents put me up for stuff all the time. I'll fly back whenever, as long as I can pay for my flight and make a couple of £100 or whatever, that helps keep my career on both sides going. I will do it. So I used to be 6 months, but since COVID, I haven't quite got back to that yet, but we'll see how things go, because I'm working on I've written a script for a film here, which I think will hopefully start shooting next year, but the writing will continue through the winter. So I shall probably be here. She'll probably come back here after I finish the mocap job. So.
Very nice. I just have a couple of very quick things on Superman. Sure. You mentioned Mark Pillow, and I think he very famously went to the premiere dressed in his Nuclear Man outfit. Do you recall much about Mark Pillow?
Yeah, I'm nervous. really, really nervous. I think there was a lot riding on his shoulders, and he was very anxious. He was very nervous. That was my impression. Now, as I say, 4 days. It's it's hard to be fair, but I could tell he was really nervous because also he's acting with Gene Hackman. And he can't get a better actor than Gene Hackman, and Christopher Reeve is really great. But Gene Hackman is pretty nerve-wracking. So I think he felt a lot of pressure on him, and they were looking to make him into, I'm going to say the name wrong, Dolph Lundgren. They were looking to kind of, and making him feel that he was there, that was all possible. And so it was a lot of pressure on someone who doesn't have that much experience.
Oh yeah, I think he does very well for the character he was given. And
I don't think he works anymore though, does he? I think he left the. Is he still in the business?
I think so. I think he did a couple of acting credits. Not much past Superman 4. I think maybe 88. I think he retired, and I think he went into the wine business. I believe.
Right.
I think.
Right.
I don't know if you know, but the Nuclear Man character was originally supposed to be a clone of Superman's DNA. So Christopher Reeve was going to play both roles, but of course, budget and things wouldn't have allowed for.
Yeah.
Of that.
Yeah. And that would have been great.
I'm quite surprised I had the budget for the limousine that you were saying earlier. I would have thought it would be.
You see, John Cryer would have had that. Now, he didn't necessarily have the same. In the old days, you got a driver and a car, and it was assigned to you. My first film, American Way, I had my driver every day. Yeah. And they sat there all day and waited till I was finished. Now that's not economical anymore. So now they just have a fleet, and whoever finishes gets a car, and that guy comes back, and then they take the next one, and you pick somebody else up. So you don't get your own driver. But in the way you used to, and fair enough. It's ridiculous, really, when you think about it. As long as someone's going to pick you up and get you there, because it's almost impossible to get to by public transit, and get there by 6 a.m. anyway. So fair enough. But he's had an amazing career, John Cryer. He's had a great career, especially in TV.
And going full circle, we're playing Lex Luthor now, and sort of.
That's right.
And are you quite surprised that, given the reception of Superman 4, its critical but also commercial failure, that now it's becoming a bit, it's been reviewed and is actually becoming a sort of a cult classic?
That's a good question. I don't know. You see, it's a really good question. I think it's great if people can enter into the spirit of things and enjoy it for what it is, rather than worry about what it should have been or could have been. Yeah. And it has its merits, and it has its entertainment value. And I think that's great, because nobody sets out to make a bad movie. I mean, 100 other people have said this too. And when you do set out to make a bad movie, or to set out to make a cult bad movie, it usually fails. No one really does that on purpose. It's just for 100 different reasons. 2 years later, you find the film you thought you were working on is not the film that you were working on, because it bears no relation to what you shot. And that happens in films, because so many people get their hands in it, and especially if the director doesn't have the final cut, and it's and there's a war between producers, and all they care about is getting their film distributed. So if somebody says, "Oh yeah, I hate that, but cut the theme song, or cut the music, or get rid of the John Cryer," they'll do it just to get their film distributed. Even if it's integral to the plot, or the comic book, or whatever, they'll do it, because they have to get their film distributed. So, and that's the hardest part. Making movies is actually relatively easy compared to getting them distributed. It's hard enough to get them made, but then you've got to find somebody to pitch it, to take it, and that's really, really hard. So.
Just to close, I just wanted to mention some of your other work again. I think the audience might be quite interested. You had a role in Churchill: The Hollywood Years with Christian Slater, and that had a wonderful ensemble cast. Was that
that was because of Peter Richardson again. Peter Richardson, who was the director for the comic strip. That was one of the comic strip projects I worked on. Peter was fantastic, because he would say, I used to have an old 300-year-old cottage in Norfolk, tiny little thing, and needed a new roof. And he went, "Oh, I'm directing these commercials. You can do them." And you go fix your roof. And he was great like that. If he liked you, and so that movie is a classic example of everyone that he liked. He just hired people he liked. And he just called me up and said, "Oh, will you do this? It's only one scene or two scenes or whatever it is." He said, "Dune is doing it. So-and-so is doing it. Come in, do a day, do a couple of days. Harry Enfield's doing it." And so, he was like that. And I was very happy to be a part of that. And I think the thing I'm most proud of him was the short 40-minute film I did with him called Lust for Glorious, which is with Eddie Izzard. And it's a fake documentary about launching Eddie Izzard in the United States. Yeah. And the whole thing was improvised. And I had to go and meet Eddie Izzard at the Groucho Club, and I had to improvise with him for half an hour. And I got the part, and it was so much fun. Improvising. What we do is, okay, this scene is about this, and we just improvise dialogue. Hilarious. It was just so much fun. And so I can't thank Peter Richardson enough for all the opportunities he's given me.
Oh, that's wonderful. And of course, things like Jonathan Creek, again, a very iconic UK.
Love that. Love that.
And with Eddie Izzard, were you struck how intelligent the man is? Because he speaks so many
languages. Oh, he's brilliant. He's brilliant.
Clever, isn't he? Yeah. Absolutely
brilliant. Very kind, very funny. He improvises in like 5 languages. Who does that? He's a genius. He was very no grandeur, no, ate with us, was shared. Often stars will have their own makeup trailer, and you won't see them till they're actually on the set. None of that nonsense. Not that that's nonsense. I shouldn't say that, but none of that. He loved to socialize and talk, and he was great. He was great.
Oh, that's fantastic. You did a TV movie called Who Dealt opposite Juliet Stevenson. Was that memorable?
Yes, it was very interesting, that film, because David Bailey, the photographer, directed it, and he wanted to get into making movies. And Who Dealt is based on a Ring Lardner story called Who Dealt, and it isn't to do with farts. It's to do with the game of bridge, and it's about this woman using bridge to expose the fact that her husband my character is having an affair with the other woman sitting at the table, who was played by Catherine Bailey, David Bailey's wife. Very beautiful woman. And it was very intense because nobody spoke but Juliet. It was one long monologue. And again, extremely generous. We would do a section and she'd go, Bailey, look what Mark's doing. You got to get the camera on Mark. And she would, at one point, she got up. She had this long chunk of the monologue, came all the way down the table, sat on my lap. None of this was rehearsed, and pressed her face against my face. So they couldn't cut me out of shot, right? So she was so generous, so lovely. She was great. Really, really, really nice. And she wanted to do it because she hadn't played American. She wanted to prove she could do an American accent, because she wanted to do films in the US. So she wanted to prove that she could sustain an American accent. So, and Armani did the clothes. David Bailey called in so many favors, and it looked beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And it was great. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. And there's one thing, the Puppets Who Kill. Was that interesting? That sound quite.
Puppets Who Kill. It's a hilarious show. It's is it Comedy Central or it's one of the, I forget. They shot it here in Canada. It was very, very funny, and it is about puppets who are in prison because they murdered people. And I played this. Oh, so funny. They're doing a theatrical production of King Lear, and the puppets are in the show, and I play the director who's horrible to them, really horrible to them, and I get killed. But oh boy, that was so much fun. The scripts were hilarious. Yeah, no, that was a great thing to do. It's still on YouTube. There's all those things are still on YouTube, which is nice. But it was fun. Really, really odd off the tops of the. And off the wall. That's the expression I'm looking for. Yeah. But you see, there's a lot of co-productions. That's why I was fortunate in Canada, because I'm British and Canadian, and I'm a member of both unions. when you have a co-production, you have to have X number of people from the UK or X number of people from, so I can be whatever they want me to be. So, you know, I did a World War II thing with Richard E. Grant called Above and Beyond. Again, I was British as far as they were concerned for that because they needed, but I was here. It was shot in Canada. A series called Murdoch, which is UK drama sponsors in the UK. They're all these co-productions need to have X number, so I can be whatever they want me to be. So that worked out very well
sounds
from my point of view.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite project in your career, a role that you're particularly proud of beyond all else?
I'm really proud of the work I did in the Glam Metal Detectives, which was, that was a massive undertaking. And again, I must have played about 36 different characters in that. And we did 7 episodes of it. And I'm really proud of that. And I'm very proud of a film I did called The Big Swap. And it was based on about a true story about 5 couples in Northampton who got into wife swapping and how it blew their partner swapping, we would say now. It blew their lives apart. And it was just a really great part for me that because I'm essentially a character actor, I don't necessarily get those slightly boring normal people, and it was a really great part for me to play. I loved it, and I'm very proud of what I did in that and my performance in that, and a couple of other things. A little film I did called Milo, where I played the Angel of Death. I'm really proud of that what I did in that. I did a film here last two years ago. It's the last film that an actor called Cloris Leachman played. She was 92 and she died. And a film called Jump, Darling. I'm really pleased with what I did in that because I played Cockney, and I'm really pleased with what I did in that. It's not a big part, but it's he keeps coming back, and it's always, everything changes, right? Everything changes all the time. I'm really proud of the fact that I wrote on a cartoon series in the UK called Chuckington, a children's cartoon series. I didn't know I could do that. I didn't know that I could, I did 4 or 5 episodes of that. I'm really proud of that because I had to learn. It was like chess. Writing for animation is not like writing for anything else. And they didn't want children's writers. They wanted comedy writers. And because I'd worked for the comic strip, so they trained me how to structure an episode of animation. Fantastic. And I was really pleased that I did that because a lot of people go, oh, no, I can't do that, and just walk away. But I kept, they rejected many. They rejected many scripts to begin with until I got it. But it's a funny thing when you ask that. I don't know. So that's what I'd say. It's a lot of things.
You were starring in pretty much in your own TV series, weren't you? I Love Mummy. You had quite a big role in that.
Oh yeah. That was really interesting. That was a network thing. We were going to go to a second series. We had 26 episodes. It was really fraught. Not fraught. That's the wrong word. Frenetic shooting in one of the hottest summers. That was a co-production as well between the BBC and a company over here, YTV, and the production company had 3 shows. They had to choose which one they were going to keep. One had to go, and so they went on, let ours go, which was a real disappointment. But it was fun. I mean, it was farce. It was just farce. Very farcical.
And finally, Mark, I mean, you said that your industry has changed so much in your career. If you could give advice to people that were thinking of becoming an actor, would you say go for it, or would you be a little bit more guarded and say you were and you went into it? Is it still a good profession to be in?
I think it's still a good profession to be in. I think if someone wants to do it, nothing anyone says is going to dissuade them from doing it. I think the old days of I'm not saying you shouldn't go to drama school, but my route, which in my day, you went to drama school, you finished drama school, you got into a rep, You had to do 40 weeks to get into the union. You couldn't work until you could only do, you couldn't do West End and you couldn't do TV unless you got a special permit. You had to do provincial theatre, 40 weeks to get a full membership. And I'm not sure I would do that now. I think for young people, I think you get a chance to work. You know, if you want to target soap operas and get on Hollyoaks or East End, do it. You're going to learn you need to do it. That's how you learn. And so I'm not sure the old route is necessarily the best.
Yeah.
Or do French theater so you get an experience. Because the good thing about theater is when television and film is fickle, and when you're not in popularity, you're not in trend, or you're the wrong whatever age, as we discussed before, that goes. But theater doesn't. So you need to have some discipline in that. But it's really, really hard because the money is so bad now. Yeah, that's a really difficult thing. So I would say to you, you know, if anyone's starting out, I said, not necessarily get a teaching degree. And because some people say, well, if I do that, you know, I'll end up teaching. I won't end up acting. I mean, I understand that, but do have something. If you can have another thread, if you, you know, if you've learned how to cut hair, or you can do bookkeeping or something you can do, because it's really tough. It's really tough. You know, I have my own company working on communication skills and with professionals who are doing public speaking. And that's saved my bacon. It really has, because things dry up and they go in, you know, go in and out of like the tide in terms of acting. But I wouldn't tell anyone not to do it. But I would say you need to be open. Don't be too fixed on this is what I'm going to be and this is where I'm going to get. Just get the work. Just do everything. Do everything.
Because when you started, did you have another idea of what you could do, or was it always?
No, I was not going to do any of that. That's why I didn't want to go to university. I didn't want to become a teacher. So I would, you know, that thing, those that can do, those that can't teach, was in my head. I'm not saying it was right, but I didn't want to become a teacher. So I know I was going to get into rep, and I got into weekly rep, which was hilarious. It's a book in itself. And nothing knocks the crap of drama school out of you, like doing, not the drama school's crap, but everything, you know, weekly rep. There's no time for anything that you've learned at drama school. It's just learning the lines. But oh no, I was going to work full time. I was not going to be a waiter or work in a pub or I was determined that I was going to make, you know, my money doing just acting. So, but things were different then. You could sign on too. You can't really, it's really complicated. Actors can't sign on anymore the way they used to. No. You know, they wouldn't harass you. They wouldn't harass you in those days. They wouldn't. So, you know, the whole thing is very, very different.
Did you find drama school invaluable, or did you find it clashed with, say, the real world of it all?
No, I love drama school. Drama school was great for me because, as I said, I had a lot of bad habits where I thought I could get away with everything by just smiling and big teeth and be loud. So, as child actors can do. So, I was really grateful for drama school. It really squashed me. It really sat on me and learned about control and stillness, and I loved it. I know a lot of people, you know, some people, funnily enough, there were some people that were better when they arrived than when they left, because there's a whole process of breaking you down at drama school. Some more extreme than others, and then building you back up. And some people don't survive the breaking down. They don't survive the chipping away at what their tricks are, because we all have tricks as actors that we fall back on. So what they try to do is get rid of those bad take away the support, so that you're actually thinking about what you're doing. And some people don't actually survive that, to be fair, and they're actually better about, and they don't necessarily. My year, everyone went into the business pretty much, and there was only about 4 people that didn't. So yeah, no, I loved it. I loved drama school. I loved being in London. You know, who wouldn't? I was 21 or 20, alone in a city like London by myself. Fantastic. One of the best drama schools in the country. It was just great. The only thing was I didn't get a grant, so I had to work all the time. So, because being Canadian, I didn't get a grant, so I had to work. So, but yeah, no, I loved it.
Were you doing acting work while at drama school?
No. They wouldn't allow that. School wouldn't allow that. No, they wouldn't allow that. They wouldn't allow that at all. No, I was doing anything I could get. I worked for Meals on Wheels. I worked switchboards. I just go to the job center and I'd get a job. And I did so many jobs. I worked in Knight, Frank and Rutley, a real estate agent, doing bookkeeping, which I knew nothing about. I worked in John Bell and Croydon, that old chemists on Widmore Street. I worked in the basement there in the stock room. And the bomb went off in the IRA and they left me. It didn't go off. They found the bomb and they evacuated the building. They forgot to come and get me and I'm still in the basement. But anything I could get. So
You did mention working with Peter Bowles earlier. What was he as generous as say Patrick Macnee in terms of an actor?
Oh, that's a tricky one. Peter Bowles is a very different actor. It was strange with that. Peter's lovely, but he has a very different background and he had a very different feel of how he's a very different performer because the series started with Jeffrey Palmer. Now, Jeffrey Palmer, the back of his neck is funny. He doesn't have to do anything. He's just funny. Peter works at it, right? So he rehearses, he takes it very seriously. And he seemed a little distant at first because Jeffrey had been a very different person. So Peter Bowles replaced him. So it took a bit of adjustment to begin with. But I liked him very much. We got on very well in the end. And he also had been he'd worked with Penelope Keith before, and he'd worked with John Howard Davies before because they'd done To the Manor Born, both who were doing Executive Stress. So I don't know what that history was, but I know he was very protective of his character. Let's just put it that way. And but he was really kind to me. We got on really well. He would question things, though. He would question, where Jeffrey would just go with the flow, but Peter would actually question things if he thought something wasn't right, or he would stop and question things. So, and Jeffrey wasn't like that. So it took a bit of adjustment, but yeah, he was great. And I would go and see him in theater afterwards, and he was always very pleased that I came to see him. So he was good. It's nice.
Wonderful. Yeah, I saw Peter Bowles on stage a few times, and he was always very nice to you at the stage door, and so
always charming. Most of those people were, Jenny Linden, Patrick Macnee, and all those people were really they really old pros. Angela Douglas. They all had a real charm amongst them. And Brian Forbes, as the director, was amazing, and Nanette Newman, his wife, would come and bring us cupcakes and all this. That was really those. What I miss now is I don't feel that the characters are there anymore. They probably are, and I'm sure if I were 25 and in the ensemble of a show in the West End, or carrying a spear, I would feel that the characters were there. But you always relate to your time and when you're young, because those people are who you look up to, and it seemed so full of characters, and they were all like of another time, really, another age. I mean, rehearsing Executive Stress, we rehearsed in Richmond Cricket Pavilion. It was, and we finished at lunchtime, and it was so civilized, and we'd stop for tea, and and all this kind of stuff. With me coming from North America, this was just how I imagined it was. And Penelope Keith would reach for her phone book. And whenever she had a series, she said to me, "Oh no, I get all my friends in." And all these wonderful old British film actors came in to do episodes. And I'd be scouring the cast list every week. I couldn't wait to see who was coming in, and because I knew them from all these 50s, 40s British films. And she'd get, because they had helped her when she was young. So she would just go through her book and get and say, "I want so-and-so to play that part." And they do it. So it was great. It was a really fantastic experience for me.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Do you have a favorite actor that you've worked with in your career?
Boy. Well, Jeffrey Palmer and Penelope Keith, for sure. Oh gosh, there's just too many. I don't think I could really answer that. A favorite actor? I don't think I could really answer that, to be honest. I've been so fortunate in the people I've worked with, but I don't think I can answer that one. I don't think I could pin it down to one person. So every experience has been so different. It's. I was just thinking about, like, Richard Gere was lovely. He was so nice to me. Hilary Swank was great. Yeah, it'd be really hard for me to pin one person down.
Did you ever get starstruck or anything because of being a fan of or people?
Well, when I was younger, I didn't understand that being energetic is not necessarily a great thing. So when you audition for a film, it's sometimes better to say very little. It's sometimes better to not talk too much, to just. But I was young and energetic, and and I remember going for Aliens, the film Aliens. And I went in and I said something about Sigourney Weaver, and the producer's face just froze because they thought I was some sort of crazy fan, and the audition was over. As far as they were concerned. I mean, I did carry on auditioning, but the audition was over as far as they were concerned. They can't have that on set. They can't have somebody being starstruck. There were some people that disappeared from shows and from the pilot to the actual series version, and people would say, I have to have people around me that I feel can support me, So, and it's like when an actor puts together a show reel, it's often not your best scenes, certainly not in North America. What they want to see is that I can hold my weight against Michael Sheen, and I can hold my weight against Toni Collette. And it doesn't matter that character is rather, dry and doesn't really, he's just giving you plot. It doesn't matter. The point to the American producer is he's not going to fall apart when he's on set with Hilary Swank. That's what we want to know. That's all they want to know. They don't want to know how good an actor you are. They want to know that you know how to behave and can carry your own weight. So I often say to actors, you need more than one show reel. You need to put, TV stuff and comedy stuff and have a drama reel and separate it, because a reel that just with, my first, well, not the show reel I've got now, but the one I had before, it opened with Terry Hatcher shooting at me. And so immediately they knew I could do all those TV movie things, right? All those TV movies, women in peril movies, as we call them in Canada. And, I've done tons of them. So, well, not tons, but quite a few. And so it's how you promote yourself is really important as an actor. And it's not always about you, about how good you are at crying or laughing, or they're not really concerned with that, to be honest, in a lot of times. Unless you're,
I suppose a lot of your favourite productions comes down to the director as well you're working with and how generous they are, and if they're an actor's director. Or do you have a favourite director that you've worked with?
Oh, I loved working with Peter because he trusted me 100%. Peter Richardson was great. Brian Forbes was great. I worked with a director over here several times. What is his name? Why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? Let me see if I can find it here in front of me. Anyway, Alex Chappell, who's great. I did two films with him. He's really, really good. Gail Harvey, there's a female director called Gail Harvey. That's something that's changed in the industry. We're finally getting more women directors. I mean, when I looked at my credits at one point, I thought I've done 70 odd films and TV shows, and I've only worked with 5 women. There's only been 5 women, but that's changing fast now. That's really, really, and I'm glad about that. Mira Nayar, who directed Amelia, she was great. Paul Greengrass. There's so many really good directors. I've never really clashed with the director. I've never really had a bad experience. I've had, more in theater than in film and TV. But I've been lucky. I've never really had someone that I haven't got on with on set. Yeah.
And in terms of future, would you like to come back to the West End stage and to do more theatre work? Or?
I'd love to do a play. There's a possible adaptation of a Jules Verne thing. I've done the first workshop for it, and I'm hoping that that's going to go ahead. It's with a company that I've worked with before that's done quite a good success. They'd probably do it small at the Arts Theatre or something like that. But if that, I would definitely. I don't think I'd do another musical. I mean, I did several. I don't think I'd come back to doing it. Well, I would if they asked me. Of course I would. But I don't think I get it. I think I'm, I haven't sung in 10 years. I mean, you can't just throw yourself back in. I'm out of the loop. I mean, they wouldn't think of me. They wouldn't think to call me. So, or even ask me to audition. So probably that wouldn't happen. But I'd definitely go back into a play. Yeah. or television or film or what, anything. So, and as I say, that's why, I used to go back every 6 months. So we'll see what happens.
So potentially that sort of in the West End or off West End, potentially, hopefully.
Oh yeah, I would love. Oh, that would go into the arts if they get the money, it will go into the arts, and it's a beautiful script, and I really hope it happens. And it's a really great part for me. And I said to my agent, if I only do one more part, this will be it. That'll be it. I don't care about doing more theater, but because theater gets hard, right? It's the discipline, and to be honest, the thing about I always loved film and TV, and the thing about theater is, especially when you do a year or something, you're always going to work when everyone's going home. You have one day off. It gets a bit depressing. Your whole life becomes the theater. And it sounds funny to say it gets a bit depressing, but it does, because you start to be totally cut off from everything else, especially in a musical when you have to, understudy rehearsals and 2 shows a day. And, sometimes there's 3 matinee days, and you just live the theater. That's it. And so it has to really be in your blood. You really, really want to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'd ever sign for a year again, which of course rules out musicals because they always want you to do a year. So,
yeah. Well, I wish you well that project, Mark. And
thank you.
Go to UK, I'll be sure to get a ticket and come and see you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll and thank you for asking me to do this. And if you ever want to do anything else about something else in particular, just let me know.
Oh yeah, I'm sure I'll hold you to that. That sounds really good. Yeah,
okay. All right.
Thank you very much. It's been a lovely conversation.
Okay, great. Bye.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.
I can see you, but look. Hi, Mac.
Half of my head.
How you doing?
I'm okay, I'm all right.
Good. Wonderful. To ask how you got involved with the film, first of all.
Well, like any actor does, I just auditioned for it. I was wonderful, and they wanted me to be in it.
Fair enough, yeah. I think they were, because it was a UK production, they were looking for people that could, have good American accents, and but were basically Brits. I think that was the same with Mark Caven. Although he's Canadian, he had the same sort of thing where he was in that sort of pile of people you called if you wanted American sounding actors in the UK.
Well, that's not exactly right, Philip.
Oh, no?
I mean,
No?
when companies came over to this country to get American actors, the last thing they wanted was a Brit doing an American accent.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
And you had to be very, very clear with them that you were not a Brit, that you were American and you were living here.
Yeah.
And yeah, so because Americans behave more, they have their own way of behaving, and British people have their own way of behaving. And even if you have an impeccable American accent, you can always see that it's not an American, unless you're really somebody who's terrific.
Yeah.
Like when I first came to this country, my wife took me to see Bob Hoskins and Anthony Sher in True West.
Right.
And I knew that both of them were really accomplished actors, great reputations, that whole thing. It was awful. I really thought it was awful. It was at the National Theater. And I thought, come on, you can do better than this. Just get some Americans to do the show. They're not going to have, your resume. They're not going to have your reputation. But dude, they will sound like Americans, because they didn't.
Yeah.
And yet I've seen other people like Mark Rylance, for example. You'd never know for a second that he wasn't American. But that's few and far between.
Yes, it's being authentic, isn't it? That's the key to it. I remember when I spoke to Mark recently, he said that the director Sidney Furie didn't like Canadians playing Americans because he could always hear it in the accent. And
that's just what I was saying.
Yeah,
exactly what I was saying.
Yeah.
I mean, Mark has a good American accent. He does. I've worked with him before. He's a really good actor, and he has a good American accent. And for Canadians, it's a lot easier than it is for British people, because you're just over the border. You see American TV every day. Like, in Britain, up until probably about 20 or 30 years ago, it was mostly British TV that people watched. And so they never really learned the American accent.
Yeah.
Never got it into their bones. Whereas with Mark Caven, yeah, he did have it in his bones.
Yeah. I think he was very proud that he did full Sydney Fury, and he never found out. Apparently, he was Canadian. So
yeah, that's because he's good.
Yeah. So what were your? I believe you have a good story from Superman 4 you'd like to share us. So
yeah, well, it was fun. The whole shoot was really fun. We shot in Milton Keynes in a disused lime quarry, and Gene Hackman was there, John Cryer was there, and Brad Lavelle and I played two hick cops, guards, prison guards on the chain gang, and we had a good time. But this one scene, really, I think we were only there for a couple of days, but this one scene was us. Well, all right. Do you know the film pretty well?
Pretty well, yeah.
Okay, you know how the car goes careening off a cliff, smashes to smithereens, and then we come climbing back up, Brad and I, and we're smoking, our clothing smoking, our faces are black and stuff, but we escaped. Comedy. Okay, so you always shoot out of order. You very rarely shoot in the order of scenes. So we shot the bit where Brad and I climbed up over the cliff edge, and that was all great. He liked that. And then we had to change into clean uniform so that we could do the bit leading up to us getting into the car, which is the next piece of scene that we're going to do.
Yeah.
So we did that. We got in our uniforms, and while, like, I was talking to Sydney about how we were going to shoot this scene, and kind of in the background over our shoulder, I saw that the stuntman was standing there waiting for the props guys to put the dummies into the car, because when the car goes over the cliff, obviously it's not going to be people in it, because this is a deep limestone quarry. I mean, it's like I would say it's probably about 50 feet down, right, where they're setting up cameras. They're setting up all the cameras and lights down there to get this car, as it comes over the cliff, see it, going over their heads, and they're coming down. The camera will catch the car coming right down with our dummies in it. So I'm talking to Sydney, and we're saying, just play around with John a bit, before you really hassle him. And we're just going through all this stuff, bits of business and stuff. And like I say, the prop guys are loading the dummies into the car, and all of a sudden we hear bam, and I look, and the car is flying up in the air over the cliff, and I look, and I can see down at the bottom of the cliff, and the camera people are running for their lives because there's a car coming down on top of them. And those cars don't weigh like what a real car weighs, but trust me, they weigh a lot. And if a car lands on your head, you know it. So they're like running out of the way, and bam, the car smashes into a million pieces, and everybody is shook. Sydney's going, what the hell? What just happened? What happened was this car was a rocket propelled prop. Yeah. It wasn't like, they didn't have a catapult or anything. They had a rocket in the sucker, and it went off prematurely. The last prop guy had crawled out of the car after setting the dummies with about 30 seconds to go before this thing misfired and sent the car careening over the cliff. And that was $25,000 worth of car, which just smashed into smithereens. So he was not best pleased. And also, luckily, they had another car. They had two cars, because you usually make two of everything, because that kind of stuff can go wrong. But that was a huge mistake. I've never been on a set where something like that happened. Not that big.
No. Well, Superman 4 is, as you may not know at the time, but certainly since, it was a very controlled production. There wasn't much money involved in the film, and whether or not there was a couple of corners cut, which might explain.
That could be. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, you could tell there wasn't a lot of money in it. You know, you could just you get a feel for that, and you knew that it was a bit of a cheapo, but I didn't know that it was like known for that.
Oh yeah, I think on another sequence, a stuntman doubling for Christopher Reeve broke an arm. Somebody's wires snapped, broke both heels. Certainly ended his career, and I know that much. He wasn't able to work afterwards.
Yeah.
Basically, the budget was supposed to be about 35 million, which is normally what a Superman film about those days cost. Canon ran out of money, or diverted it to other things, and they only had half the budget. So that was, of course, a major problem. But I take it, when you heard the words, Superman, you expected quite big things, and to suddenly be on a cheap film, that must have been quite surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I said, I didn't realize that it was that cheapo. I thought it was just, I knew it wasn't like a blockbuster throwing money. Like, I did Batman, and Batman, you could smell the money all over the place. The sets were beautiful. They were, you could walk in some of them, and they were interiors as well as being facades. All the costumes were absolutely fantastic. No corners were cut on that. And so you can really tell when the corners are being cut.
Oh yeah. I mean, what was Sidney Furie like to work with? Was he a good director from your point of view?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was like a real kind of, I've directed 800,000 films, and I know what I'm doing, and I just want to get this done. He probably wasn't having an easy time on it either, because when you cut somebody's budget, you're into production, and you thought you had 35 mil, and all of a sudden they say, well, it's not exactly 35 mil, it's more like 15.
Yeah.
Then that's going to piss you off.
Oh yeah. And Sidney Furie shared a trailer with Christopher Reeve just to save money.
Really?
There was lots of things.
Oh, that's great.
Sadly,
they tried to get Gene Hackman to share my trailer, but I kicked him out.
I mean, was he quite an amenable person? Was he nice, Gene Hackman?
I didn't have much to do with him, but when I was getting fitted for my costumes down at Angels, I came out, and coming towards me up the path is Gene Hackman. So he's coming towards me, and I said, "Hi, Gene. My name's Mac. I'm going to be playing one of the prison guards." And he goes, "Oh, really?" And just walked by me like, pooey. So I couldn't say he was amenable.
And you do share. There is at the end, Christopher Reeve turns up, dropping Gene Hackman off. Did you get to meet Christopher Reeve at all?
No, he wasn't working when I was.
Yeah.
John Cryer was, and John Cryer was great. He was really lovely.
Yeah. I get a sense he was quite larger and live, sort of typical Hollywood sort of personality. Is that fair? Or
who? Cryer?
Cryer, yeah.
No, not really. I mean, to me, typical Hollywood personality is more like Gene was, which is like, I'm over here working with the B team, and I don't have a whole lot of respect. Whereas people usually in smaller roles just know that you're actors who ended up living in England. Yeah. And, they're just normal people. They're not Hollywood. No. We did Memphis Bill, for example. And Memphis Belle was filled with great names, John Lithgow and David Strathairn and Matthew Broderick. There were loads of people in it who were really well-known Hollywood actors, and they were just normal. They were really nice, really human beings. We all hung out together, ate together, played Scrabble together. John Lithgow kicked my ass in Scrabble. I have never been that humiliated in a Scrabble game. The guy is a genius. But yeah, they were great and fun to work with,
And how about your fellow marshal, Brad? Was he and nice to work with?
Oh, Brad and I are, well, we were good friends. Brad's passed on like a long time ago.
Yeah,
But
sadly.
yeah, very sadly. He was a really terrific guy, and we were really close friends. And that was gutting when we found out that he had passed. Awful. Yeah, really great guy. We had a good time that day.
Oh, good. And did you see the film at the time when it came out? Did you
Yeah,
do you
sure.
like it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of DC comics. I read a lot of them when I was a kid, and I was kind of split between DC and Marvel. But yeah, I like the Superman movies. I remember going to see this first one, and that was just after I came to this country. I didn't get a chance to audition for it, but I saw a lot of guys who I had met subsequently who were in it, and so that was fun because that was my first experience really with working with a lot of people and then seeing them in films. And I really enjoyed that movie. I thought it was great.
Oh yeah, I think as good as the other sequels are, I don't think you can beat the original, really.
No.
I assume you were never considered for anything in 2 or 3. You never had any close calls or anything to get into those, or it was.
No, I did ADR, additional digital recording, which means basically looping. Like after you shoot all the the footage for the film and it's all cut together, and usually it's a rough cut. It's not what's going to go out, but it's something that you can sync voice to. And I'm sure you know how that all works with ADR. You've got a scene and you've got background people, and they're not really saying anything when the film is happening.
Yeah.
They're just going, and then you put their words in their mouth.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of that on Superman 3 with Richard Lester. That's how I met him.
Oh.
He was a terrific director.
Yeah.
Really, really excellent director and real fun. I did a couple of commercials with him and subsequently, and just a great guy. Yeah. But I just did voice on that. And I don't know what happened with 2. Yeah, I don't know. It's a little blur, Philip, those days.
Well, I think we forget how long ago these films were. Before Superman 3, was it just sort of like the sort of minor background artists you were sort of doing the voices for? Or was it any of the?
Oh no, I mean you don't usually voice the stars.
No.
Although I have done that. I've done Kevin Costner, and I've done George Clooney. I've done a couple of things, but you don't do much because basically what you do is, like, if they're doing a shoot someplace else, they're like in Italy and the film was made here or whatever.
Yeah.
Or maybe they're in India, then they're not going to fly back to do their own ADR if it's a few things. I mean, if it's a major screw up, then yeah, they have to. It's in their contract. They've got to come back. But they don't really hassle, major stars for it. And so you have the fun of trying to match their voice and do it. Like with Kevin Costner, I did, I don't know, 5 or 6 days work on it, like a lot. And in the end, they said, we can't tell who's him and who's you, which is the best compliment that you can possibly get. Yeah, and it's fun, man. Doing ADR is a really good money maker and a really good fun thing to do.
What film was that with Kevin Costner? Was that an animation or something?
I can't remember no, it was about a dog and a racing thing. I don't know. I don't remember the name of it. But yeah, it was a lot of VO in it.
Yeah.
And that's all I remember about it, really.
Okay, did you have? Yeah. Do you do your, when you had more when you were doing your own acting roles, did you have to do your own ADR? And is it?
I did a couple of times. Yeah. I mean, one job was shot in Africa, in Kenya, and it was for Lucasfilms. It was called The Chronicles of Young Indy. And it wasn't. It was a big, huge, very expensive, very well done TV series
Hmm.
with hour-long episodes.
Yeah.
It's like when Indy is like 18 and it's World War I time. And I played kind of over the hill cowboy who was out in East Africa. And there were a whole lot of old geezers with me and stuff. And Freddie Jones was there. Really, really good cast. And we had a terrific time. And it was really professionally done. You know, I mean, it was Lucasfilm. So, I mean, they had all the money in the world. But because of where we were shooting, and I think there was something going on with the sound guy, but they didn't get clean sound on a lot of it. And so I had to go in and revoice quite a lot of my stuff. I would say at least 2 days worth. And that's a lot.
Yeah.
Because you're doing 8 hours a day with cues back to back. So, I mean, you know, it's a lot of stuff. And that's not usual.
No.
But, you know.
And finally, before I let you go, Mac, I believe you did have a brief appearance in The Empire Strikes Back as a rebel. Is that correct?
That is absolute crap.
I must admit, I didn't think I saw you in it, to be honest.
I've been living with that for I don't know how many years. It turned up on IMDb like years ago.
Yeah, I just did a bit of research, and I thought, I'm not sure about that, but I just asked you just to see if, because there's lots of weird credits out there.
Let me just tell you what happened. I was doing a convention, and I never put that down as a credit because it wasn't me.
Yeah.
So I went along to the convention. They gave me my table and all that stuff, and they usually have a big poster behind you telling all the things that you've done because they want people to be able to see that you were in this, that, Red Dwarf, and Star Wars. You know, not with. That's what happened, is that they had Star Wars up there.
Right.
And I said to the dude, I was not in Star Wars. He said, yes, you were. I said, no, I wasn't. I should know, especially for Star Wars. I think I'd remember that. And he said, well, you're in IMDb as Star Wars. And I said, I've asked them like 3 or 4 times to take that down. They always take it down, and it always goes back up in about a month.
Right.
And he said, well, okay, then I'm going to have to take it off there. And I said, please take it off there. It's embarrassing. That day, somebody came up to my table and wanted some memorabilia signed. And he handed me a DVD of that episode of that film of Star Wars. It was Star Wars, right? It was the first one.
Yeah.
And they had a picture of me in one of those pilot's outfits, the orange, you know, the guys. And I said, holy shit, that is me. It wasn't me, but it was somebody who looks as much like me as I've ever seen. I bought it. I really thought it was me. So I forgave them everything because it looks like me.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah, sometimes they get it really wrong, and sometimes it might just say somebody's got a doppelganger. But yeah, because it's currently on there is episode 5, The Emperor Strikes Back. So it's I think going to haunt you a little bit, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's all right. I'll live with it.
Well, thank you very much, Matt, for talking to me. I must let you go, and have a lovely weekend.
Yeah, you too, Philip. Take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, that's right. No problem at all. Just happy to see you. So that's fine. Thank
Well, it's nice that I was able to catch you. Deleted scenes.
That's it. Yep.
Oh yeah, poor Mark Rosenthal. This is kind of okay. Which part? Play all?
Yeah, so play all. So we'll play all in a second. So has it been a while since you've actually watched the deleted scenes, or have you do you recall watching them before?
Boy, a long time ago. I mean, it was such a kind of traumatic thing. I don't not in an awful way, but I don't think Gene Hackman's got as a deluxe edition.
No, I wouldn't have thought so.
God, I don't even remember these. Oh, oof.
I know there was a lot of excitement among Superman fans when we knew these scenes were finally going to see the light of day. Because obviously, much like Superman, the Superman 2, the Donner cut, when Richard Donner did his version of Superman 2, because obviously he was fired from Superman 2, so there's much excitement to see his scenes. And I think the second thing that Superman fans were equally as keen on was to see this footage. And I think people were quite surprised that it was so raw, that it's from a work print, and people, I think, were hoping that they're going to see the finished scene. So whether or not this is all that Warner Brothers has, or where they decide to release work print.
Well, I think there's obviously a lot of temps in here, and the film was the excess evidently Warner Brothers and Sydney was reluctant to do anything, and then finally he was the director. He liked it, and Chris was fine with it. Yeah. And Warner Brothers just said, "Hey, it doesn't work, so lose." And it was too long. It was over 2 hours. Yeah. You know, you got to cut out a half hour.
Yeah.
And it was devastating to. I mean, I had a group of people who had worked very, very hard to overcome with no, kept cutting the effects budget, and they kept cutting everything. And but there you go.
Yeah, what there is in the film, so obviously the film's 89 minutes as it stands, and all of that is very impressive given the budget and the constraints. You then add the half an hour that we see here, and you realise, I mean, the finished product, I think, is very impressive for the money and the time that everybody had. It's a gigantic concept. It's not a small film by any means. It's this huge Hollywood film that was made on a shoestring, really.
Yeah, and basically, Golan Globus had lied to the studio. They said, "Oh yeah, we can make it for nothing," and then they just went and started writing checks to themselves, basically. Producers' fees. I set up Olsen, Lane and White with the help of incredibly talented people, and a payroll service to pay them. Yeah. And it was out of my own pocket because they didn't pay me. They didn't pay me for months. And then they finally sent me a check for $82,000, $100,000. And I thought, oh, finally. The check bounced. I mean, it was just, they were crooks. They were total crooks. And I don't care what anybody says, that there's no, Hollywood is like most businesses, full of corruption and backstabbing and all that. And I've seen it, I've felt it, but these guys should have been put in jail. Yeah. I mean, this was so wrong, so unethical, but that was their MO.
Yeah.
And Warner Brothers, they played Warner Brothers. This is so stupid. And Gene Hackman and John Cryer were absolutely troopers. And
like all good actors, also the Clive, what is there was,
Clive Mantle.
yes, gave it their all. They didn't wake up in the morning and say, well, we're going to go in and do a half-assed job. We're going to go in there and we're going to commit. And it's very difficult to be an actor. Everybody thinks, oh, it's all, fun and games, autographs, sunglasses, premieres. You deserve every penny you get, and nobody resents it. At least I didn't.
No, I think anybody that knows what an actor has to do and the long hours and the dedication, I'm sure, as you say, they do earn every penny of what they get, and certainly if a film's successful, they've earned the money because they've made it for the studio and everybody.
Once you make a deal, you make a deal. And I'm sorry, but Disney has got to honor the deal they made with Scarlett Johansson, even though, because of the dreadful COVID-19, they couldn't fulfill, at least according to Disney, the fact to give it a release. Yes, you could. I don't care if you release it in empty theaters. You got to honor. You got to stand up and honor the contract. But then, if I may say to anybody who's listening, Disney is not the same company anymore.
No, I don't think it is.
It's shameful, and they should take the name off the water tower. Just the water tower on the lot, and just say, okay. Okay.
Maybe
I'm on.
I was going to say, Harrison, what do you think is responsible for that change in Disney? How has it become?
It's been the whole thing. If you try to trace it back to the beginning, it's just been a bit of a slide since December 5th, 1966. And that was the day Walt Disney died. And he had no heir that he designated. So who were the first people that took over? The suits, Cardwalker, and there was the magic was gone. There was no creative influence. Walt was unique, and it's just sad. Now it's just become this huge multinational conglomerate that doesn't understand the ethics and value in what Walt Disney stood for and still stands for to most of the world. They think, oh, yeah. I remember sitting with somebody when I was doing an interview, sitting on the bench at Disneyland. And they asked me, they said, well, does the Disney family still own this? They did, or something about the Disney family must not something. I said, they don't own it. None of it. There's Diane Disney tried her best and eventually threw up her hands and said, can't do it anymore. I don't want to have anything to do with the studio. And so created the Walt Disney Family Museum, which is a wonderful place. Unfortunately, it's closed due to COVID. But she wanted to keep the legacy alive, the true legacy alive. And anyway, get back to Superman.
Yeah, absolutely. Perfect. That will do nicely. So I'll go from 5 to 0 and press play. So 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, play. So I think this is quite an interesting scene because it's obviously a little flashback to
Yeah.
when he's, and obviously this is shot specially because it's not, there are figures that look very similar to Marlon Brando and Savannah York, but they're not them, are they? I think it's
No, of course, that's always the part of the issue or problem is that you've got to make sense of what came before.
Yeah.
And sequels, remakes, it's tough to capture the essence.
Yeah.
And that's why they never really work. In my view, there's only a few good sequels. And the best, and of course, everybody to agree it's not really a sequel, it's the whole part of the film, it's Godfather 2.
Yeah, Godfather 2, The Empire Strikes Back,
Yeah.
and that's, you know, a few other films that come close to the original, but in terms of exceeding.
Well, of course, I'm prejudiced. I think I agree. The Empire Strikes Back.
So I think it's quite ambitious that they actually sort of recreated that scene of again with a baby in the spacecraft, and obviously there's a few shots from Superman the movie, but it's clear that they have put some additional shots in because you can tell that it's not Marlon Brando in the scene because the S on his chest is different to the first film. So again, that would have been some money that could have been saved elsewhere if of course the cuts were, if people knew that it was going to happen really. But I think it's a nice little scene. I think the scene we're seeing now might have been cut for perhaps a sensible reason, in that this is, I think, takes place a couple of days later after Jeremy has written a letter to Superman, but everybody's wearing the same clothing. So I think, again, it was shot very quickly.
Yeah.
Perhaps it wasn't until later that they realized actually everyone's dressed the same. So maybe there was the argument to actually take the scene out because of that, really. But I think it's a good reflection of how tight the money was, that there wasn't time just to do.
And it was a combination. It was a combination of factors. It was not only the money. It was it was the director. There was it just never gelled, and I became very good friends with Sidney, the director, Sidney J. Furie,
Yeah.
Whose work I had admired on the Ipcris file. And that's one of the reasons I took the job. Because when I was in the business, my first question would be, I'd have two. When's the release date? And who's the director?
Yeah.
I passed on a few things because you get to understand the true ethics and personality of some directors. And I didn't want to work for people who were grumpy.
Yeah, fair enough.
This stuff is so, oh man.
And I think,
they were true. I mean, touches like this, a lot of this was Gene Hackman.
Yeah.
Who would show up, and Sidney would be a bit flustered, and we would all be kind of thinking, what are we doing here? And Gene, in his very diplomatic way, would say, I have an idea, perhaps this, and we'd all go, why not?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
and for years I was always puzzled why Clive Mantle has this sort of silver fit metal, the plate over his, his
I know, it's just like,
private area.
so this is called subtle humor.
Yeah.
But if it's subtle, sometimes everybody goes,
yeah.
Well, it's not funny.
Mm.
So why?
Yeah. Supposed to be the petri dish that he was created from, that somehow very conveniently settled.
Yeah, completely. But, if you have to explain a joke, that's strike 1, 2, and 3.
Well, it wasn't until I spoke to Clive about his scenes that he told me why that was there, because I just thought maybe it was something they put in and they were going to, when they shot it, they were going to use camera angles and things placed on the set to hide, like they did in Austin Powers, sort of hide the areas, which I think is probably what they should have done.
Hide the naughty bits.
Yeah, but actually, in this, I think it was supposed to be the petri dish, but I don't think it works.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think some of these, this particular scene in particular, I think that the tone of the film may be slightly off, and maybe Sidney Furie just seems a bit lost in some of these.
Yeah, you can't do version 4. Admittedly, they did 5. I forgot if it was without Chris Reeve, but it's not a TV episode story. That's a different genre, and it's a movie.
Yeah.
And movies have a rhythm and flow. This was like take a whole bunch of shots, put them in a blender, and just take one out at a time. And the minute you try to get into backstory, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
I may have told you, we went to the preview in I think it was down in Anaheim at a theater where people were just invited kind of off the street.
Yeah.
Come in and watch a movie and let us know what they think. When the logo came up, they were excited. The anticipation was, and I thought, fingers crossed. Now they all had cards to fill out and with pencils to make notes, which part you like, and then there was going to be focus groups afterwards. By the time we got to now Sidney was so nervous, he went across the street to the bar, the restaurant, and he was just a wreck. And I said, I'm sure it'll be fine. By the time the end of the screening came along, the theater was half empty, maybe 2/3 empty. And people were annoyed, and they started throwing the pencils at the screen. I thought, well, if they're throwing the pencils to the screen and then tearing up the cards, and the cards that came in mostly were not for all audiences, let's just put it that way. I mean, and now I had to go to report to Sidney, and it was kind of, how did it go? Not too well.
Okay.
And I've worked on bad films. Nobody goes into it expecting it to be bad.
No, of course not.
And this sequence was, I thought, pretty good. But again, the nuclear man is kind of a clown. Well, he is a clown.
Yeah.
And so here's Chris, who I have so much respect for. Really good guy. Doing his best.
Yeah.
In a film that he helped write.
Yeah. I think you're right. There's some very good bits in the sequence. I think when they are either each side of the cars and the cars are crashing, that's quite a good effect. I mean, it's a bit ropey here and there, but it is pretty good. And the shot of the sort of wide shot of them both coming together with the cars in the background, I think it is done very well. So there's bits and pieces.
You're right. The mechanical effects people, and this was a all British crew. There was one of the few exceptions. Were absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
You know, okay, we'll figure that out. And so they figured it out. And then Sidney wanted the reverse, but he couldn't understand how to get the reverse without crossing the line. So I said to Sidney, you know, I was always trying to be diplomatic. I said, well, if we do the reverse, then we go on the other side. I can't even remember. I've lost my cognitive thinking to a degree. And so he looked at me and said, cross the line. I don't give a goddamn about the line. Okay, well, okay, just saying. So it was a battle.
Yeah.
It was constant battle.
Is it quite interesting because there's a few publicity shots from the deleted scenes, and one of them has Chris Reeve catching a skip that Clyde Mantle is supposed to throw to him in that scene, and of course it's not in the actual sequence on this DVD. Yeah. And I did speak to Clive about it, and I said, was it just a publicity shot, and he does remember. I mean, of course, there's lots of years have gone by, so it could be a false memory, but he recalls quite vividly filming that sort of encounter with the skip. So even within the deleted scenes, there's still deleted footage that we don't have. So it's but why that's not here, I'm not sure. But I think this scene is I think quite a sweet extended scene with Margot and Chris, and there's much more her flying solo, and again it's a bit ropey here and there, but the scene I think works quite nice. There's some wonderful shots of both of them, I think, in this one.
Yeah. And once again, you know, we didn't have the money to shoot backgrounds, so they're all taken out of the library.
Yeah.
And the composites are dreadful.
I think
Harrison Ellenshaw. Heard that name before. Evidently, he wasn't. He must have been drinking something other than water. I just don't. Margot, unfortunately, was, and I don't mean this. I'm not going to say it. She just wasn't into this at all.
No.
And she was doing her best, and but insisted that she do her own makeup, which is not done, and because you got to do makeup for movie lighting, not for going out for a date.
Some of the publicity interviews that they did for the release of this film, the interviews with Margot, you can clearly see what you just said, that she really wasn't in it, and she's quite matter of fact that people were doing it for the money, and it's, you know.
Well, now today we're starting to recognize stress, and the mental health is very important.
Yeah.
And she was under a lot of stress, and she was having kind of issues, for lack of a better word. And so she was allowed to make decisions because we wanted it. Once you cast an actor, you've got to see it through to the end. You can't just change actors unless it's, you know, Darth Vader.
Yes. And what's interesting about the two scenes was this scene and the scene afterwards, is that these two scenes were actually released on some of the extended in the UK market, the Japanese market, and they are on YouTube in their completed version, so we can see the difference between this rough cut and final.
I think that's Chris Reeve's daughter.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Oh, that was so mean.
Yeah, to actually cut his daughter out of the film.
Well, when I showed this rough cut to the visual effects people at Olsen, Lane and White, and so I said, "Oh, we got this. Come in, take a look." And so we went to the screening room, and they burst out laughing because it was so bad.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, you know, and they gave me such a hard time. They said, "Harrison, why did you take this film?" I go, "Well, you know." And they again, and they were dedicated. They did the best they could, and every day was another nightmare of, no, we can't do that. We don't have the budget. And they just kept coming back and over and just saying, yeah, we made a commitment. We're here. And I will always be very thankful for that. Yeah. As well as I say, all of the crew, this gorgeous, you know who did that matte painting? The one earlier.
Oh, this one, is this your father's work?
My father did it.
I thought it might be. Yeah, it is a gorgeous.
One of the, it's brilliant.
So you've got these wonderful shots of, you know, like your father's matte painting, and then we're back to these very sort of ropey shots. So it's a real mismatch, isn't it, of some effects.
It is a mismatch, and yeah, this is oh my goodness, oh God.
But again, the final version of this scene that is on the, what was on the VHS,
which once again adds to the confusion. You know, you've interrupted what flow there might have been, and backstory and interest into where are we.
Yeah, because it wasn't until I got the DVDs, because all the DVDs have been based on the American cut of it, and I thought, well, hang on, where's these two scenes of what I grew up watching?
Oh.
And this is some wonderful stuff by Gene Hackman, isn't it?
And then it's the shoe. I mean, it's so wonderful. It's so delicious, and it's really tough to pull this stuff off. I mean, yeah. French Connection.
Yeah.
Great.
The Scarecrow, I think, is also a great Gene Hackman film. Al Pacino as well. I think this was one of the most tragic parts about the scenes at work out is so much of Gene Hackman's performance is on the cutting room floor.
He was the glue that kept it together, and his improvising, his characteristics, his smirks, and then that things like that. I think I'm glad you made me watch this again.
It's a lovely joke with the handcuffs, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, it's just that it's those little bits that, as many people have said, make it interesting.
Yeah.
You want to see things that people might not get, some audience might not get on the first go round, but it all kind of adds up. And then eventually, now that we have, repeat show, internet stuff, you can start to dissect it and look and see those subtleties.
Yeah.
And that's lovely because obviously it helps define the character. There's the old saying, show it, don't say it.
Yeah.
Show that he's very sick. He's lost his powers. I'm getting all that. It's not like, I feel crappy. I don't have my powers anymore. And he's got to pull off.
And this is such a good scene, isn't it, by Christopher?
It's heartbreaking.
And I think as a Superman fan, whenever you see the character of Superman, because he is this all good guy, you always feel terrible when you see Superman suffering at any point. And I think also, given what happened to Christopher as well in his later years, makes it even more difficult to watch a scene like that. But it's a great acting performance there. I did hear that there was perhaps worried about, because I think at the time that the AIDS crisis was very much in the headlines. Whether there was some connection with the scratches that Nuclear Man did, and it was maybe somebody said, "Oh, this is like a metaphor for the AIDS crisis" or something like that. But I don't think it was. But that, I think, is just something that Fukushima read too much into it, really. But it's something that.
Yeah, well.
But I think fans sometimes, I think, what did Freud say? Sometimes a dream is just a dream, or something like that. Sometimes things are just. We tend to overanalyze things sometimes, I think. I think this is a lovely scene as well, because it expands upon the reason why Nuclear Man is interested in Lacey in the first place, rather than in the finished film. It doesn't really make sense at all why he suddenly becomes obsessed with by just seeing her.
Well, trying to make sense of something that doesn't make sense is a fool's errand.
Yeah.
And the whole Nuclear Man concept was just overwrought. Bad cut.
And I think very ambitious for Nuclear Man here to turn into to a missile, and I've seen some of the storyboards, and was designed to look very much like a nuclear missile, but was just with his face kind of where the nose cone would be. I don't know if you recall if that finished effect worked at all, or again, we don't have the finished version to see.
Yeah. This is like watching something out of body, completely new.
And although I think the fans would have liked to have seen the finished versions of these scenes, it's quite interesting to have this work print because you can see
Yeah.
how it was done, how the camera moves. You see all the cranes and all the wires and the poles, and so it's quite an interesting behind the scenes and how it was done. I would quite like to see the work print of the whole film actually and see how it was done.
We had so little money.
Yeah.
That's not an excuse, never should be. But people were, Richard Conway, absolute genius at mechanical effects, miniature effects. He could do it. He could do it all. One time, we had to shoot. I was looking at the missile, and when the missile takes off, I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I was back in my office because I said, "Okay, we'll shoot it at magic hour. We'll wait until so you get the feeling of overcast and all that kind of stuff."
Yeah.
And the time was right, and so Richard turned over camera. I showed up 15 minutes later, and I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "It was time. You know, he just had that sense, and the shot looked great." So you've got to have this kind of melding with all the circumstances, and he was, well, he worked on Brazil. What more can I say? Great stuff. And only one of the rockets fired. So, well, that's good enough. Okay, well, why only never mind.
Yeah, they wouldn't just fire one, would they, if they were thinking?
No, well, there was no such thing as do it again.
Yeah.
There was a lot of, well, Olsen Lane and White or somebody will put in, you know, an animated rocket firing of all forward fire.
Yeah.
What happened to that? No money.
Yeah. And all the black bars that we're seeing along these scenes, is that to time it with?
Oh, that's indicate a fade in or cross dissolve. So sometimes, you know, every film has a lot of, even in those days, a photo reel, you know, would have fade ins, fade outs, and cross dissolves. Now, it's, as with everything else, it's a matter of timing it. You know, you've got to keep you fade in slowly and fade out. Nobody does fades much anymore. Well, some people do. But it depends on the filmmaker, depends on the timing. You have to, you know, trust the editor. He or she knows what they're doing, and generally they do, because you live and die by editing.
Yeah.
You really do. And a good editor can save a mediocre picture from going further downhill. A bad editor, you're done.
Yeah. So all the
Look at this. Look at this.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Oh, I forgot.
It doesn't quite sell with the Great Wall, does it? Really, unfortunately. Yeah. I mean, I think again, it tries to sell it as best as it can.
Well, you're right. It's a mishmash, and we, and of course, see these out of context to a degree.
I think it's such a great idea from a script point of view for Superman to for the eyes of a child to see that there is no borders, that we are one planet, and it's a very nice message that the film has to try.
Yes, it's admirable. Is Superman so powerful? Why can't he end war? Which, good point.
Yeah.
Oh, I love this sequence. Sorry.
No, I do as well.
I'm patting myself on the back. Even though the dialogue is not good.
I suppose one of the criticisms I think that fans have had is that he hasn't got a spacesuit on and lazy breathing in space and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think.
Well, you'll believe a man can fly, and that there is oxygen in space.
Yeah.
Not many people know that.
Well, I think it's always as a fan you can logic if it works, if you can make a logic in your own mind as to why something is happening. So you think, well, okay, Superman has generates a bubble of oxygen around him or heat.
Yeah. Well, we had the same issue in the black hole. You know, when they're going from one place to another, and the meteor's already hit, and theoretically everything should disintegrate. They should all die. No. And I would say to my father, I said, how can they breathe out here in space in the black hole? And he just looked at me and said, well, not everybody knows that black holes have oxygen surrounding them. I go, oh, okay. But you've got to suspend your disbelief.
Yeah, you have to.
Because it's a movie. And that's why, you know, there's so much on social media these days, the questions, all this stuff. And then I rarely get involved. But somebody asked me, how come you don't? I said, okay, these are called science fiction movies. Yeah. If it was regular science, it'd be 2001.
Yeah.
Which even then is, well, it's a great movie. I just blew me away when I saw it because it was so accurate. And Apollo 13 is brilliant.
Yeah.
So you want the movie, you want to see the movie, and you give it 2 minutes, 5 minutes, and if it's still working, you just give yourself up to it, and you embrace it, or the movie embraces you, and you go, this is going to be great. I didn't see Star Wars until it was finished, and George had high hopes that it would do Bond type business. And I was working on shots that I didn't know where they went or didn't go. And going to that first cast and crew screening within just a few minutes, you just go, oh, this is going to be great. Now, the filmmaker, the writer has to come through. They've made the promise. And unfortunately, in Superman 4, that was a given because it was a sequel.
Yeah.
And people wanted to love it. And then it just betrayed them massively.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. So what was it like to see those scenes again? Right.
Scary.
Yeah.
It was. I enjoyed this much more than I thought I would. I mean, there's so many mixed feelings, of course. It's so much that triggers these memories.
Yeah.
And both good and bad.
Mm.
I have to say, I didn't get a lot of sleep during any of it. During pre-production is the last, when seeing the storyboards, which can be changed, this, that, and another, putting them up on the boards, getting the input. That's kind of the high point.
Mm.
Then comes production, which is a whole nother animal.
Yeah.
And so you if you're lucky, you can kind of plateau. But then, destiny doesn't necessarily make it easy. So you get things like, oh, why can't we shoot? Well, the grip truck broke down. The generator doesn't work. Okay. So there would be a lot of waiting, and then there'd be lunch, everyone. You go to lunch, and the crew, everybody involved, from the runner had a certain investment into it. This was part of their life.
Yeah.
And they may have felt discouraged at times, but then there were the high points. So making a movie is a wonderful experience, even if it's a bad movie, because you don't know. You have no idea.
Yeah.
I worked on Cabin Boy, for God's sakes. And I remember in the final screening, or one of the screenings, for Jeffrey Katzenberg. Now, Jeffrey Katzenberg is a well-regarded suit, or creative, and I'm sitting there, I'm watching might have been something else, and it was Cabin Boy, and the director wanted to do reshoots. He was unhappy. He said, "We're going to do this," and so the lights go up. Everybody turns to look at Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Tim Burton, the executive producer, was in there, and he knew this was not going to work. But to his credit, Jeffrey said, "Well, this could work." And I thought, good for you. It could. And I'm looking at something and go, well, it's quirky enough. It could work. And the same way I feel about Superman 4.
Yeah.
This could work. And you don't wish it bad things. I mean, I was not treated exactly kindly about the effects. And one of the most flattering things somebody said, and I think in a sci-fi magazine, about Harrison Ellenshaw did the effects well. I had help, or I don't mean that in an unkind way, and the letter said it was disappointing that Harrison had done this, because it's a stain on his reputation. And I get that. It was kind of a compliment.
Yeah.
They're saying he fell, he jumped a shark, several sharks.
Yeah.
And they can't all be Howard the Duck, George. It's just, sometimes you keep willing it to be better, or to be what the intention was. And God says, destiny says, don't think so.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, fortunately, because it keeps you keeps you honest, keeps you, don't get overconfident. Never ever get overconfident, because pride goeth before the fall.
Yeah.
And I've tried to instill that in my friends, in my children. You know, there's always something coming around the corner that you can't expect, because you make plans. If this happens, we'll do this, and then you never thought about this. Expectations is really hard not to have, because you want the best. You want to, especially with family, and of course, you know, going through the pandemic, right? It's the same for you, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You want to be able to. Sometimes you have a better day. Sometimes you have a lousy day. Anyway, okay. Back to Superman.
Yeah. 4. So what you said about the deleted scenes? So what we saw was for 30 minutes worth of the scenes, but some existing footage either side of the deleted scenes to make them coherent in their place in the film. So if we take maybe 2 minutes off, that's down to about 28 minutes. So there's still a good sort of 15, 20 minutes of footage that we haven't seen yet. So hopefully Warner Bros. Will release it at some point. There is a scene where Clark goes and visits his parents' graves in Smallville towards the early part of the film that see. And of course, all the nightclub sequence with Clive Mantle, and there's a big dancing sequence with Clark and Lacey. So that would be quite good to have. It seemed almost suspicious that Warner Bros. Released most of the scenes, but not a coherent part of it. So where they did that deliberately to avoid people doing.
Well, whether it's conscious or subconscious, I will never know. But basically, when Warner Brothers just kind of wrote the whole thing off, why would we go and spend money to have somebody search through all the archival footage, if you will, because the stockholders aren't going to be happy. So what's this item on the file? And I get it. I would like to see it, but I'm not going to write a check. You know, I don't want to see it that badly. And I think there's also this whole thing of, let's move on. We don't have, you know, film historians, if they want to write a check, get together, fine. But then we'll throw open the doors and you try to make sense of piles of cans. And at one point when I was at Disney, so there was a subcommittee formed, in Congress to go and protect orphan films. Orphan films meaning because there's nitrate and it's turning into gunpowder and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And I was given the myself and Ray Scalise, who were at the time running Buena Vista Visual Effects, the job of explaining to this group of people who knew nothing about films, like I knew nothing about government, why these orphan films that hadn't had ownership needed to be saved. And so we were given the task of making up a business plan. And about a day into it, I said, this is ridiculous. How can I choose what is a film of historical value.
Mm.
And one of my arguments was the head end footage, the camera tests for a film that's a period piece, and so the cameraman goes out and starts to test the film to see the, out on in a street or just on a different part of the lot, just to see how the lab would handle all that stuff. And I would try to make the point, don't throw that film away. Think, what if during the life of Christ, we had documentary footage that was of not of him, but just of a marketplace.
Mm.
There would be so much recording that. So I've always felt very strongly about, it's okay to throw away the trims.
Mm.
It's okay to throw away the unchosen. Oh, come on, Harrison, get together. The cuts that didn't make it into the film. The other shots didn't work.
Yeah.
The same scene, but there's certain things that can't be replicated.
No.
And that's why I said, they may be orphan films, but they're to be treasured.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I think there is a potential market for the complete version of Superman 4, even if it was just the entire work print, rather necessarily the finished scenes. I think there are lots of Superman fans out there that have got money in their pocket that they'll gladly give to Warner Bros. If they wanted to release it. I think.
Well, I agree with you. They're film students. They're people who study film, want to be filmmakers, and you have to take a look at what didn't work and why this was chosen and what was in the filmmaker's mind. Why did they choose this over that?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just a gut feeling.
Yeah.
Go to some of the greats. Apocalypse Now never should have worked. No. It just seemed doomed. And Sheen had a heart attack. I mean, and they had hurricanes in the Philippines that destroyed sets. Everything went wrong.
Yeah.
They got shut down, lack of money. And I was working with George at the time. And I think I said to him, so that must have been Empire Strikes Back time. I can't remember. Anyway, I said to George, because they were very good friends, and if it wasn't for Francis, American Graffiti, it might never have been made. But I said, obviously you're aware of what Francis is going through. Are you in communication? And basically I was kind of saying, are you helping out?
Yeah.
And George looked at me and he said, no, if I know Francis, he'll find a way. And I thought that was cold-hearted, but later, and George is anything but cold-hearted. He cares. He really cares. But it was an interesting take on the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
And you know, there.
I suppose George Lucas had so many challenges himself making, the Star Wars films independently. So perhaps he knew that part of what made the film so good was that struggle. And if he had sort of just said, "Well, I'll help you here with a check," maybe Apocalypse Now wouldn't have been the film it was. So perhaps he knew that sort of torturous journey was part of the artistic process, perhaps.
As the story goes, and I think it's true, the 20th Century Fox board of directors wanted nothing to do with American Graffiti, and they thought it was stupid. But Alan Ladd Jr. said, very quiet man, but he had great taste, and he had this certain sense. I was working on a film. I was working on The Phantom.
Yeah.
And it was a tough show, like they all are. So what? But Alan Ladd, was he a parent? Oh, I can't remember. I'm so muddled. But he would come in every day, the dailies, every single day, and he would sit on the aisle, and he wouldn't say a word, and he'd just watch them. I've never experienced anything like that before. You had to, now it's a whole thing. If you want to show, even a rough cut, you've got to call this guy, go up the ladder, and then you finally get, well, he's in a meeting right now. Well, I'm sorry, but this is important. Need to get a sign off on this stuff. Yeah. And well, he's too busy. Well, I won't name names, but it's a completely different business. And the people that are in charge in Hollywood wouldn't know an f-stop from a bus stop. And it's sad.
Yeah.
You think Walt Disney knew the difference? Yes, he did. He also was an incredibly multi-talented and curious man. And there's a wonderful picture of him that's at the archives somewhere that is Walt looking before Disneyland opened. He's looking at a worker who is checking out the asphalt on the tracks on Main Street. And he's asking him questions. What's this? What's that? I want to know. I want to know what it's like to be you. And I want to tap into your knowledge and your expertise and trust that you know what you're doing. Otherwise you wouldn't be here. And that's always touched me. And I think that's what always touched my father, is that there was this mutual respect, but you had to earn it from Walt Disney. He wasn't a pushover. And of course, there are a lot of stories about that.
I think you say the people who are in charge of the studios and making movies these days, we're talking about the higher echelons of it, but I think it has, as you say, changed very dramatically and not for the better. I think with the Bond films, we're quite lucky that it's been the same family that have been involved for 50 years, but you, even as a big Bond fan, which I am, you feel there's almost a bit of a fatigue and a lack of enthusiasm, perhaps a little bit, in in the last few films, and they seem to be getting longer and longer in between the films, and it's maybe almost oh, do we have to make another one because there's pressures from well,
Yeah.
now it's Amazon obviously, but so
Well, as you know, my sister, Linda Ellenshaw Thompson, an incredibly talented visual effects producer. She's done so much work, and she was always in constant demand because she's efficient. And I would say to Linda, and I'd say to others, she's worth every penny because she will save you more money than you could ever imagine, because she's no nonsense. She understands, she gets the big picture. And that's something that's missing these days. She eventually, I asked her, she kept getting asked back and back and back. And she said, I've done it. I've, not in a conceited way, but now it's just the same, different people, but the same problems.
Yeah.
Not understanding that, well, why should we shoot this part first out of continuity? Well, it's the weather, it's the time of year, it's all sorts of dynamics. It's managing upward. And last I checked, I don't know how many films Michael Eisner, bless him, made. If you want to make a movie, if you want to finance a movie and you can't get the financing, you can storyboard it and make it in your mind.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah. It's a wonderful opportunity to experience that, and everybody has disappointments, part of life.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Going back to with Superman, I think one of the problems at the moment, from a fan perspective, is that I don't think Warner Brothers values Superman at the moment. They seem to be making lots of comic book films and leaving Superman alone. The last film with Superman was Justice League, that Warner Bros. Well, they made a mess of that until the Snyder Cut came out, which was a better version of that particular film. But they don't seem to value, particularly I look at the Christopher Reeve films, because this year was the 40th anniversary of Superman 2. And they didn't release a 4K of it or anything like that. They've completely missed the anniversary. A couple of years ago, they released the extended TV cut of Superman the movie, which had about 45 minutes extra scenes that they put in for the TV networks back in the late 70s wanted to get 2 showings out of Superman the movie. So they said to the studio, "Can you give us all the footage you didn't put in the film, so we can make our own cuts and therefore put more ad breaks and make more money out of it," which I think they did quite a few films back in the 70s and 80s, and they released that on Blu-ray, and it sold out twice, I think, and was very, very successful. And there was a similar extended cut of Superman 2 that just right for this year to release, and they just completely ignored it. So the chances of Superman 4,
2 directors or one director who are both pretty good, Richard Donner and Richard Lester.
Yeah.
Well, who's Richard Lester? Oh, Hard Day's Night. Never seen that movie. It's just disrespectful, I think, in a way. And it's comes down to the bottom line, and it's in dollars or pounds or whatever you want to say. Foreign distribution, this deals, that deals, and yeah, that's tough. But you've got this amazing work of art, if you are, whatever you want to call it, that was done with the input of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. And it's hard to, as you can tell, it's hard to define that, how that dynamic can make it all the way to an audience. And now that we have movies on demand and Netflix, and nothing's really changed, because I have a good friend who's working on a series for Netflix, and then another friend who's also trying to deal with that. And they say, you know, it's just the way it's always been, you know, start, no, stop, no, we're changing directors, no, we're changing producers, no, we're changing this. And I don't really have a point, but
No, I see what you're getting at, because obviously you've got the artistic side of the business, then you've got the business itself, and obviously that is a conflict with, to try and keep art pure, you've got to take the money out of it, but of course it's a money making process, and that's the goal. So the two clash from time to time, hence why Richard Donner got fired from Superman 1, at least in well, from Superman 2, so at least in part, partly the thing behind it. But Richard Donner famously said that if they ever released the TV version of that film, that he would take his name off it. So he was always against that happened. And so what Warner Bros. Did to get around it was they put the TV cut on Blu-ray with his director's version, and said, we are honouring Richard Donner by putting his version on it, but also need to stand demand, which was kind of a way to say, here you go, Richard, you know,
you're happy,
let's make our money, sort of thing.
Well, you never, who has final say on a film? It's not the director, it's not the writer, it's the money. And you know, completion bonds, and it's the whole business of filmmaking, and I've been fortunate to work with incredible directors who allowed the departments to build the department, and allowed and trusted that they had hired the right people. And that doesn't automatically mean that the project is going to be successful, but it's not, it can't start on a, you know, everybody's can't get along with everybody else. Sometimes that works, but people are not going to, you know, do their best work if you abuse them.
No.
You know, if you decide, oh, we got to cut the budget, and oh, you know what, the caterer's costing too much. Well, that's not the way you do it in reverse. You start out with, you know, bare bones, and then when they're working, you know, in far off locations, freezing their butts off, and it's supposed to be the middle of summer and all that stuff, then you start to reward them and say, thank you for hanging in there. Thank you for putting up with, you know, the hurricanes, this stuff. Thank you. And then they become more motivated. you're ensuring that they can trust you and that you will bail them out. Because there's always, you know, there's the old adage, which is, you know, if you want the nice weather to change, and you're in the middle of Florida or Southern California or somewhere, if you want the weather to change, make a movie, because as soon as the crew shows up, it'll be the locals say, gee, it's never snowed or had a storm like this before. So you have to understand that nothing, like I said, if it's easy, you're doing it wrong.
Oh yeah. And as you say, obviously, it's about rewarding people for hard work. And I remember reading that Christopher Reeve and Sidney Furie were sharing a trailer when they were making this film, just to save money in a desperate attempt.
Well, yeah, you're exactly right. That was inspiring, because to see, you've seen the photo of Sidney and Chris Reeve sitting in the chair, but right by the set, no trailer. And I think the crew really respected that. That it wasn't, you know, I'll be in my trailer, let me know when you're set up. And by the way, you know, I don't feel like coming out right away. I'll just continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It made me smile. It really did. I thought it was a terrific thing.
Yeah.
And yeah.
And I think what makes Superman 4 so special, because it's one of those films that on paper you would think, well, the box office was bad, it had all the special effects issues, it was how the scenes cut. You would think that no one would be talking about it 34 years on, and here we are and doing so, and there's so many websites out there that there's so much love for this film. And I think because it's obviously, it has a great story. It has the heart of the first two Superman films, where Superman 3 got a bit too comedic. So you would think that Superman fans might not want to put Superman 4 DVD on their shelves, but actually they're proud to have that on their shelves, and they are part 3. So I think it's a film that has a lot of love, and partly because people like yourself and your dad and Sidney Furie were part of it, and all the things you've learned since its release about the intention and the love for the projects. I think that's why it actually, I think it's my favorite Superman film in a very weird way. It's probably the one that I watched the most, and because you feel you have such a goodwill for it. It's almost like an abandoned puppy or something. You want to love, and you want to see the
Yeah.
There's so much potential in it, so much, and I think that's what people love. And
we always have to remember, the puppy has its downsides, and it may pee on the carpet. That's kind of Superman. Yeah. But you have a great point in that, whether you actually worked in the movies or not, movies and entertainment is what we remember. That was part of our culture. That was, you know, I remember just using my father's Academy card, because I was Peter Jr.
Yeah.
And so I would take his Academy card, and this was when I was first married, and we'd go to whatever theater was showing. Sometimes it was Westwood, sometimes somewhere else, and just sitting there. And now I look back on that very fondly, because it was part of my youth. It was 24, 25, whatever it was.
Mm.
And same thing seeing when I was in the Navy, going to a drive-in and seeing the first Herbie movie, and just letting it be there.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's very much a part of our culture, and every culture has, hopefully, their own films. I mean, boy, I saw movies that absolutely blew me away, and I didn't know why, but I would go. I loved Jacques Tati's films, and I would get the giggles so much I'd start to cry because it was so funny. And he never said a word. He just had this attitude and this, you just loved the character. Saw my first Fellini film when I was in college, and I thought, wow, this is odd, but I think I kind of like it.
Yeah.
And, Day for Night, again, I like it. So, some of my favorite films are films about making films, 8½, Day for Night. I saw Breaking the Waves and walked out of it kind of in a daze that it had so, grabbed me in a way that I didn't quite understand, but I knew I'd seen something important, at least to me. So I just became enamored with, I had no intention necessarily of following in my father's footsteps, but fate, destiny came and smiled on me.
Yeah. So I suppose your interest in those films about making films was probably what inspired you to direct the film that you did, about the movie that goes terribly wrong. I keep getting what it was called now. What's the film that you say you kind of sent me it? It was
The Dead Silence.
Dead Silence. That was it. It was a wonderful, obviously, behind the scenes making of a film.
Yeah.
That was, I suppose, why you were attracted to it.
That was, we would call those things an homage. We didn't rip off the same thing. It was an homage. But again, I was blessed to have that, to be able to do that, and to making any film. It doesn't matter how big the budget, how small the budget. The issues are still there in one form or another.
Yeah.
So enjoy it. I have a cousin who she lives in Canada. She's hugely talented as a master gardener, has written a number of novels and books that have been published. And she asked me a few weeks ago, she said, I've decided I'm going to write a screenplay. And I didn't say, what are you, nuts? I said, go for it.
Yeah.
Do it. And if it doesn't sell, if nobody makes that movie, as I said earlier, you're making the movie in your mind. You're experiencing the thing. Well, does this work? Does this work? And so, as my father would say to me, you have to be your own worst critic.
Yeah.
I said, oh, what does that mean? You have to, you have to take what other people. When he was painting his paintings for his gallery art, he'd invite, he'd get a FedEx package. He'd invite the FedEx guy to come in, and he'd say, "Look what I'm working on." The FedEx guy said, "Okay, I got some deliveries to make here." He'd say, "What do you think?" And people would say, they'd be complimentary, but he wanted a real honest first impression. And you could tell him that. And my mother often would. She'd go, "I don't like it. I don't know why. I don't like it."
Yeah.
And so that honesty was very refreshing. And I think that's what all creative people fear, but have to accept, that showing it, I said, showing a movie to a preview audience is, and I would never sit in the front row if I'd worked on the movie. I'd stand in the back. I had said this earlier. And at some point, you're just watching people peel off and walk out. You don't want to say, wait, the good part's coming up. Wait, hey, come back. No, just take it all in and understand that you can't fully understand how they feel.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
The creative is its own living hell in a way.
It must be very tough to sort of, when you're creating art, or whether it be paintings or something for a film, that you're, even if you've got all the resources in the world and everything's going right, at a certain point you've got to hand over that art to other people to look at and to criticize, or in a good way or a bad way, and it suddenly is no longer your thing, and it belongs to the world, and it must be very strange to sort of, was a difficult.
Yeah, it's you're always on the edge of self-doubt. It's just, I've forgotten which movie we were working on, and I think I related this in another way. And I'd be looking at shots, and I'd go, "Is this good or is this dreadful?" I can't tell. I really can't tell. You're so close to it, and you want to will it into being. And it's constant, as my father would say, the painting will battle you. It will say, "Oh, you think this is good? Yeah, it's okay. But you've got to attack it. You've got to subdue it. You can't just let the muse strike, especially in filmmaking. No, there's a deadline. And you've got to keep on going and try to, God, how many shots did we have on, I can't remember, on Tron? We had 1,200. And you've got to hope that they can all rise at the same, all ships rise at the same time. So that you don't have what I call the wincers, those few shots where, some little lady in Des Moines can go, "Oh, what happened there?" And I don't mean that against the little lady, but somebody totally not involved. And writers go through that. And I had the absolute pleasure to work on 2 syndicated television shows, Xena and Hercules. There's pressure almost weekly, because the episode's got to air this day, this time, and then, but the producer, can't remember his name. Rob Tapper would say, well, if that episode doesn't work, we always got the next one. So stop whining and moping around. Got another chance. And that's what I loved about his attitude. And I loved about everybody say, well, Harrison, why are you working on TV? Because it's a whole nother thing. And nobody sets out to make a bad movie. And, you know, Cena was a huge hit.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And eventually you come to the last season, whether you like it or not. And sometimes the last season isn't the best season. It peaks. You know, to use a sports analogy, you hit a certain level, you're an all-star, you're the best in the league or whatever it is. And then you think, I can sustain this, I can keep on going. And the toughest thing is to admit to yourself, because who knows where the top comes? Where is the top? How many Wimbledons? Well, I can come back for one more. Of course, you can. You might have to, like Bjorn Borg, finally lose in the second round of the US Open and walk out and never pick up a racket again and just say, it was great. I enjoyed it. And it's very rare for people to do that, because you just want to feel that, that satisfaction, that contentment, that competitive edge. And I miss it, but I have the memories.
So what was the decision that made you want to retire when you did? Because as you say, to let go of that process is difficult. What made you want to step away from it when you did?
I just did. It's eventually, if you keep striving, you'll keep losing a certain amount of confidence, and then you can spiral down. And you know, look, again, not to bash them, but Disney, they're in free fall, complete, utter free fall. The whole brouhaha that's going on now, people are taking sides, it's divisive, this, that, another thing. And, you know, Mr. Iger can't help himself. Oh, I'm gonna retire next year. No, the next year. No, the next year. No, step away. You did a great job, especially somebody who's used to be a weatherman. Okay, nothing wrong with weathermen, men, women, but it's time to hand over the reins, to let go, and not keep saying, "Oh, I'll just do consulting." No, you're just being a pain in the ass, no matter how talented you are.
Yeah.
And that was part of why I didn't want to be here's Harrison. Yes, Harrison. What? Okay. All right. Yeah. Fine. Nice. Why don't you go? Why don't you go off and get yourself an ice cream? And I just didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And the same with my sister. Same with so many people that I know who, had a good run. Now it's time to hang them up and let the new kids experience it. Don't be a hog. You don't want to start to be, Harrison, such a pity. I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
You
it
know?
sounds like a sensible thing to do, but a hard thing to do. But you say it's a sensible thing. So obviously, I admire you for doing that, because it's the desire to continue is obviously so strong. So it's obviously a very wise person who can sort of just say, yeah, enough now. Let the new guys come in. So yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. Hey, I used to be adequate at tennis. Now I'd probably fall over if I try to, hit the ball. So we all have our limits, and it's, as I said earlier, now those stress and anxiety that athletes that are asked to do the impossible over and over eventually takes its toll. And I think that goes certainly for the film business, television business, live theater.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine live theater doing Hamilton, two times on Sunday, and then every night after night after night. And I can't conceive that. And never disappointing.
I mean, eight shows a week, a matinee on a Thursday and on a Sunday.
Yeah.
To do that.
You get a break, and then when you say, "Okay, I'm walking away. I gotta take a few deep breaths." Everybody do, "Oh, why?" I have tickets for 2 years from July. So the audience has every right to feel shortchanged, but so do the creatives. The set decorator, the whatever. I just remember there was a big hit, the theatrical presentation where they were on roller skates went around the theater.
Oh, that Starlight Express.
Yeah. So Starlight Express, the production designer was God damn it, worked on Captain EO. And I remember having a discussion with him, and we were talking about Starlight Express. I'll think of his name later, but anyway. And he said, and I was kind of complaining about Captain EO. Oh God, this is not going well, and we got to do this. And he was doing the concept designs. He goes, "You guys in movies have it easy. You get the take you like, you're done. You don't have to come back." Yeah, well, sometimes you do. But he had a good point. I thought, what am I whining about? I have no reason to whine, because I'm not having to do it over and over and over at the level of perfection that has to be accommodated.
Yeah. I mean, I've only seen Hamilton on Disney Plus, and I'm a big fan of Hamilton and Lin-Manuel Miranda's work in general. But it's tiring just watching the 2 hours 20 minutes. You just think, how do you do that eight times a week to that level, especially something non-stop like Hamilton? Well, if it's a play, it's still just as hard, but the concentrated effort. No wonder people can't stay in the cast for any more than 2 or 3 years, because you would just.
It takes a toll. It wears you down. And yeah, there's so many different aspects to theater, to live theater, to television, to movies, to documentaries. That eventually it exhausts you. I don't. but that's why I'm sitting here rambling on. because it's I love talking about it.
Yeah.
I enjoy our.
Yeah, I was just going to say, House, that I do love the conversations that we have and we've had so far, and I hope we can have another one in the future.
My father would tell the stories about making of Mary Poppins, and of course his film career was spectacular. And as he got older, as we all do, I would laugh with my sister because there was one time that Walt came over to my father's house in Encino, came for dinner, and of course it was a brand new house. Everything went wrong. My mother was stressing over what to feed Walt and what would he like. Meanwhile, it was a new house, and the custom made couch had not arrived. And where's the calling up the couch maker, the mover? Finally, here comes the couch, and here comes Walt and Lily. Now the movers are trying to get the couch, which has got to be 15 feet long. I mean, it was a big couch. It fit between the fireplace and the wall in the living room. So now they're trying to get it through the doors. So Walt comes up and starts telling them, no, that way, no, that way. And they're thinking, he looks familiar. Come on. So now my mother's just going, oh God. My father's going, oh God. And it was not that big a deal, but the couch didn't fit. So it was oversized by two. It was one of those, it was like a, kind of a bad comedy of errors. Yeah. But it was pretty funny retelling the story. And so now the couch wouldn't fit. So now the couch is kind of askew, and not quite at the fireplace. Meanwhile, my mother is slaving over whatever she was making. I forgot what. And Walt comes in and sits down in the dining room or whatever it was. In the dining room. So it was a nice house. It was a new house. And so Walt sits down and says, Peter, do you have a television? Yeah, but there's a show on that is a variety show. It takes place in Disneyland. It's not, but I'd like to see it. Yeah. So can you bring a television in here? So my father goes, I think it was even a black and white, might have been, and brings the TV into the dining room, sits it on the table, and so Walt could watch the TV. And my mother is just like, what is this? This is just so we would laugh about it and later, and it was hysterical because everything that could go wrong went wrong. The couch didn't fit. The couch came late. The meal was completely ignored because it had gone, it was being reheated. She was stressing. My dad was stressing. I was kind of like, oh. And I started to get wrapped up in the anxiety, but it was a great story.
It's one of the things, you put it in a film, no one would believe it, would they?
Well, as my father's memory started to, and he was a great storyteller. So he would say, uh, to its friends, and Linda and I would be there, and he'd start to go, yes, Walt Disney would come over every other week for dinner. It started out often, then it was every other week, and soon, Linda and I'd say, watch, it'll be every week before long. But we wouldn't call him on it, because what harm is he doing?
Yeah, exactly.
He was a great storyteller. Mm. He would embellish, but otherwise it just ends up being, okay, so we had this guy over for dinner and the couch arrived, and
the magic is of that detail and that embellishment, isn't it? So you need that.
Yeah, you've got to give it some rhythm and flow. And so if you have to lie or embellish, who's it going to hurt?
Yeah, exactly.
And we all do it. I'm doing it right now.
Yeah, we all need to, don't we? Because if we without embellishment, without storytelling, we wouldn't have movies, theatre, or anything to begin with. But we need stories. We need that version.
It's our culture, where did it start? It started with cavemen.
Yeah.
It started when they decided the cave dwellings, let's go France, which are buffalo or whatever. I can't remember. But it's amazing. People want hieroglyphics. Cultures want to tell their story. They want to pass it on to other generations in the hopes that the next generation will learn from what it was like and hopefully not repeat the same mistake. I would one more story because it keeps triggering memories. So I went into the Navy right out of college for one reason or another, and now in college I went to Whittier College, a relatively conservative college, but still there were shenanigans that went on. It was the first time I didn't have a curfew. So I was like, oh, this is great. I don't have to go to sleep. But Harrison, there's called classes.
Yes.
Oh, do I have to go to classes? If you want to pass the course, yes, forget it. I'll go the next day. So I was just screwing up like crazy. Anyway, so eventually I graduated. I went to the Navy just because it seemed kind of convenient. I mean, it's great. You get great food. You get to be on the ocean. It's kind of like a luxury cruise, except for the fact, and they'll pay you. Yeah. You don't pay them. And so you get to see different parts of the world. There's only one little, just like, as I say, just like a luxury cruise, except for one thing. When you're shooting these big guns at the North Vietnamese, they don't like that. And they shoot back. What? I never thought it all the way through. But boy, again, I learned so much. And I started reading books about, Ho Chi Minh and how Vietnam went from this to this, and from how the French and all that. So basically I was doing the homework while I was doing the work. And it switched my, I read as much as I could. But again, I was fortunate because I came out alive. And I learned, and again, just when you think you know it all, you don't. Because there's a lot left to know. And I feel that the same way today. I mean, I'm learning from so many people. I've learned from this conversation things that I had either forgotten or seeing you again. It's lovely.
I enjoy speaking to you always, so it's been a great pleasure to do so today, and I look forward to next time.
It's a pleasure. I love talking about my favorite subject, me.
Well, I know that you love talking about yourself, so that's it's a win-win, I think.
Well, I appreciate it, and thank you.